The man was clearly just an inconspicuous old man in the prison, but the power he displayed the very next second instantly stunned even the special class prisoners in the prison, because the room overlord that even they could not defeat together was actually slain by the old man with a single sword strike. But what they did not know was that the old man before them was not an ordinary prisoner at all. In this prison, his strength ranked among the top 3. It turned out that in this vast universe, there existed a prison where all those imprisoned were non-human species. And this prison was the one that made all races across the universe tremble in fear, charisma, solitude. The reason it was called solitude was because anyone sent here would remain imprisoned until death. But Ager could no longer remember exactly how many years he had been locked up. On this very day, Ager's cell door was opened. "Get up, you're changing cells today." Ager slowly rose to his feet. "I didn't expect a month to pass so quickly." Then he followed the guard toward his new cell. The guard looked at the old man walking ahead of him and felt speechless. By rights, I should be leading him to the new cell, but instead it feels like I'm following him. I was warned by my seniors long ago not to provoke this old man. But the entire structure of this prison changes randomly every month. How exactly does this blindfolded old man still manage to find his way? Before long, they arrived at the entrance to a cell. Ager even reminded the guard in return to be careful on the way back, since this place was probably quite far from the guard's lounge. The guard did not want to get too involved with him and only kept urging him to hurry inside. The moment he saw Ager enter with his own eyes, he immediately reported to his superior, "Single cell transfer complete." As soon as Ager stepped into the cell, he heard the noise all around him. He merely took a sniff with his nose and judged that the place was about 500 square meters. And most of those locked up here were first-level prisoners, who were at the very bottom of this prison. The prisoners in this prison were divided into different ranks. Most here were level 1, with the highest only being level 2. But Ager caught a different scent. Looks like what comes next will be very interesting. Just then, a golden light lit up in the center of the room. It turned out the guards had teleported the meal in. Ager had indeed not eaten for a long time, and was just about to step forward and serve himself a bowl. But at that moment, a level 2 prisoner spoke up and ordered everyone to move aside. He had to eat this meal first. The crowd was angry but dared not speak. Among the crowd, a blond boy whispered to his older brother, "Brother, I'm hungry." He had just taken a step, wanting to ask for a bowl of porridge, when his body suddenly froze in place. At the same time, the level 2 prisoners also turned their gazes over. At that moment, everyone's eyes fell on Ager. "Old man, stop right there. There's no food for you here." Ager did not even furrow his brow, only telling them that even in a dump like this, they should learn to respect the elderly. "I only want one bowl. That will be enough." The curly-bearded man sneered, thinking Ager had gone mad. "There are rules here. If you're not one of the organization, then whether old or young, you're not qualified to eat." After saying that, he stepped forward, intending to drive Ager away directly. He grabbed Ager by the throat and mocked, "Your eyes are even wrapped in bandages? So you're a blind man." But in that very instant, he only felt the world spinning around him. With a light twist of his wrist, Ager directly wrenched his body around 180 degrees. Immediately after, the man drew a spike from behind his back, and with a casual slash, Ager destroyed his eyes on the spot. "Since you mocked me just now, you should pay the corresponding price." The older brother immediately shielded his younger brother behind him. He could tell now, this old man was not someone to be trifled with. The other prisoners were also filled with shock. They had not even seen clearly what had just happened. The level 2 prisoner merely glanced over indifferently. "All right, this is a little interesting today." Then he ordered his subordinates, "Bring that old man to me." Ager merely sniffed lightly, and already had a clear idea in his mind. About 21 people were walking toward him. Meanwhile, the guard also went to his superior to report his work. The more he thought about that blindfolded prisoner, the more curious he became. What crime had he committed to be locked up alone for 30 days? Could it be that he killed another prisoner? His superior let out a disdainful sneer. "In here, thousands die every day. Just killing one insignificant prisoner could never earn such a heavy punishment. Every cell in this prison is packed with hundreds of prisoners. But what that blindfolded old man did is something even I find horrifying. He killed every single prisoner in one cell and left not a single survivor. You think that's impossible? But that is the truth." The guard felt a chill run down his spine. The people in that cell were in danger. At this moment, Ager was like a god of slaughter, massacring the level 2 prisoners. Wherever he went, every blow was fatal. The other prisoners watched with numb terror. Just what was the background of this old man? And in this prison, there was another even more interesting thing. More than 2 trillion prisoners were held here, and every person had a number tattooed on their neck in the order they entered the prison. The guard suddenly remembered that old man seemed to be number 51. That meant he was the 51st person to be sent in. In other words, he had already been inside when this prison was first established. He had been imprisoned by this place for a full 61 years. Meanwhile, those level 2 prisoners had already all been defeated by Ager. Ager only felt annoyed. He just wanted to drink some porridge, yet he had to smell such a heavy stench of blood. Seeing this scene, the boy's older brother was completely dumbfounded. He could never have imagined that a blindfolded old man could be this strong. By contrast, the younger brother beside him was full of longing. If only he could become this strong too. Dozens of level 2 prisoners had almost no power to fight back and were knocked straight to the ground. Even more frightening, someone noticed that every one of them still had a last breath left. That was enough to prove that the old man's control over his strength was terrifyingly precise. The leader of the level 2 prisoners asked in a deep voice who the old man really was. But Ager could not even be bothered to answer, and instead coldly mocked them for thinking they could overwhelm absolute power with numbers. In my eyes, things like you are trash. I've already severed your hand tendons. In at most 2 months, you'll die here. Ager threw out one final sentence. If you want to die sooner, feel free to come find me. The level 2 prisoners no longer dared act arrogantly and could only limp away. When Ager served himself food, no one dared go near him again. But he had no intention of stopping them either. If you want to eat, then go serve yourselves. Don't block the way. Thanks to him, they were finally able to eat a full meal today. Most prisoners thrown in here would die. Even if they survived by sheer luck, this place would activate all kinds of systems to make their lives worse than death. Every prisoner who managed to endure those torments had to be treated with caution. At this moment, some had already marked Ager as the most dangerous presence in this room. Judging from what he had shown today, neither his words and actions nor his combat power were like those of an ordinary person. So the older brother raised his guard to the maximum, preparing to stay wary of Ager. No matter what happened next, he had to protect Zero by his side. But just then, his pupils suddenly contracted. At some unknown moment, Ager had already appeared behind him. You two are really interesting. The older brother backed away repeatedly like a startled cat. He had not even noticed when Ager got close. In that instant, the three of them were all thinking different things. The moment I entered this room, I smelled a special scent. Now, I've finally found its source. Ager looked at the blonde boy. It seems there is a very precious bloodline inside you. The older brother became furious on the spot and told Ager not to talk nonsense. But what he did not know was that no matter how much he tried to hide it, he could not escape Ager's nose. The older I get, the more I've seen. In the next second, the older brother burst out with his aura. I'm warning you, shut your mouth. If you dare tell anyone about this, you're dead. Ager was a little speechless and raised a hand to scratch his face. What would I gain from telling anyone? It's just that I haven't seen such a precious friend in a very long time, so I found it novel. After confirming that Ager truly had no ill intent, the older brother stopped pressing the matter, then immediately turned and left with his younger brother. Just then, another burst of golden light erupted in the room. This time, what was teleported in was not food, but a group of prisoners who had earlier been sent out to mine. The Rhino Beastman Manhwa complained the whole way, I'm exhausted. Beside him, the Sea Eagle Beastman Horik looked the same, his face full of fatigue. Behind them was also a beastman named Gaku who did not say a single word. After the group was teleported back, they quickly sensed that something was wrong. Why was there so much blood on the ground? They examined the viscosity of the blood. This had probably happened about 30 minutes ago, and at least more than 20 people must have been injured for this much blood to have flowed. The big rhino let out a roar. We've only just gotten back from mining. Who the hell made this place like this? But the only response he got was dead silence. No one dared answer. Seeing that no one spoke, Ager slowly stood up. I'm the one you're looking for. Is there a problem? The big rhino narrowed his eyes. A newcomer came today? What's your name? My name is Ager. I did everything here. If you want to ask something, then say it directly. The big rhino was very displeased with Ager's expression. That condescending attitude was painful for him to look at. But the eagle beside the big rhino felt that something was wrong. He belonged to the eagle tribe, and his eyesight was terrifying. Just now, Ager's body gave a slight sway, and in that instant, he clearly saw the number engraved on Ager's neck, 51. The eagle did not hesitate in the slightest and immediately stepped in front of the big rhino, telling him to stop. The big rhino was baffled on the spot. Why are you stopping me? He's just an old man, isn't he? But at this moment, the eagle was already covered in cold sweat. He ignored the big rhino completely and only spoke to Ager. We won't provoke you, and please don't interfere with us. Ager gave a low then turned and walked away. If you don't provoke me, I won't trouble you either. Before leaving, Ager tossed out one last sentence. Let's live in peace like that. Only after confirming that Ager had really gone far away did the eagle finally let out a breath of relief. Just then, the prison broadcast sounded again. Lights out time has arrived. Activating no standing system. Everyone lie down with your backs pressed flat against the ground. This was one of the 4 major systems of the prison, namely the gravity control device on the prisoners' bodies. Once sleep time began, everyone would be suppressed by gravity and unable to stand up. Even if someone forced themselves to stand, they could be electrocuted to death on the spot. So no matter how unwilling they were, they could only lie down obediently and wait for dawn. But just then, no one noticed. A red insect crawled out from a crack in the ground. It silently climbed onto one prisoner's calf. Then it found a blood vessel beside one of the leg hairs and began sucking that prisoner's blood. Lying on the ground, the big rhino asked the eagle in a low voice, "Why did you stop me just now?" In the big rhino's eyes, Ager did not look all that strong. Had the eagle seen something? The eagle let out a long sigh and said only one sentence, "I saw it." But when he spoke his next sentence, his whole body was trembling. The eagle's voice shook. "I saw 51 engraved on his neck." The eagle had absolute confidence in his eyesight, so he was certain beyond all doubt that was 51. After hearing this, the big rhino could not stay calm either. If he really is 51, then how long has he been in this prison? Even the eagle could not say for sure, but most likely, he came in when the prison was first established. So he does not even have a rank assigned like we do. And don't rush to apologize either. He doesn't look like the kind who holds grudges, so there's no need for us to clash with him. Just as the big rhino was still suppressing his anger, 2 pebbles suddenly struck the ground beside him. The 2 of them tensed up instantly. Everyone is being restrained. Who made that noise? They turned their heads and saw that not far away, a group of zombies had appeared, crouched over prisoners and tearing into them. That sight scared the souls out of everyone still alive. The eagle's face turned deathly pale the moment he saw those zombies. Ager noticed the commotion over there as well, and only found it unbearably noisy. He might as well go back to the solitary cell for some peace and quiet. He tilted his head and saw that all the zombies had insect bite marks on their legs. Ager smacked his tongue. "During the time I was locked in solitary, who opened the bug chamber?" In the next second, Ager began forcibly breaking free from the immobilizing restraint. Immediately after, arcs of electricity crawled over his entire body. By the time the zombies rushed in front of Ager, he had already sat up. He let out a low laugh. "If I don't deal with you, I won't be sleeping tonight. This electric system on my body feels like nothing more than a tickle." The zombie horde surged toward everyone like a tide. Seeing this, the older brother's heart pounded wildly. Then his fists also began forcibly breaking free from the immobilizing restraint. He could not understand why so many zombies had suddenly appeared here. But there was no time to think about that now, and he immediately told Ciro to climb onto the rock behind them. Then he gritted his teeth against the pain and forced himself to stand, while the electric system crazily subjected him to high-voltage shocks. The instant he stood up, the zombies lunged right in front of him, and the older brother's face began to change shape, while fur rapidly grew over his skin. "Come on, if you've got the guts, then come at me." In the next second, his clothes were torn apart by the expansion, his hands turned into beast claws, and his movements could no longer be suppressed. The charging zombies were shredded apart by a single swipe of his claws, instantly reduced to mangled pieces. On the other side, the big rhino also did everything he could to force himself upright and resist the zombies head-on. But their side was fighting with extreme difficulty and clearly could not hold on for much longer. And the more they fought, the more wrong it felt. These zombies were like an endless supply, and the more they killed, the more appeared. As beastmen, they could barely withstand the electric system, but the ordinary prisoners who could not endure the system had it much worse. They had only one ending, to be bitten, and then become new zombies. The more the big rhino fought, the more alarmed he became. Why could the zombies keep standing, completely unaffected by the electric system? Gritting his teeth, the eagle guessed, they were already dead, so the system had no effect on them. But looking at the densely packed horde before them, both of them began to panic. The zombies were closing in like a sea of people. No matter how strong they were, they would be worn to death alive. On top of that, the electric system was tormenting them to the brink of collapse, and they could hold out for at most 5 more minutes. The eagle immediately came up with a plan and prepared to brace himself against a rock for a while, at least to avoid falling. But at that very moment, the eagle saw the most terrifying sight. A figure wrapped in electric light streaked past, so fast that the naked eye could not catch it at all. Accompanied by one heavy step, Ager suddenly leapt up and went straight above the zombie horde. Though his eyes were blind, he could still sense everything here with perfect clarity. With a casual swing of the weapon in his hand, more than a dozen zombies fell instantly. The zombies' claws and fangs struck Ager's body, yet they could not hurt him at all. They could only be slaughtered by him one-sidedly. Ager's figure was like a bolt of lightning. After cutting down one group, he flashed to another. The bigger his movements became, the more frenzied the electric system grew. Its intensity even increased tenfold, yet it still could not suppress him in the slightest. The big rhino was completely dumbstruck. How could this old man be this strong? In less than a minute, Ager had actually cleared the entire area of zombies. Everyone stared fixedly at Ager, with the electric system restraining him. Being that fast was something no one would believe if they were told. Yet Ager looked as if nothing had happened and said calmly, "It's good that you're still alive. Fortunately, you weren't bitten by bloodthirsty zombie fleas. With the crisis over, everyone collapsed onto the ground. After hearing Ager's explanation, they finally understood where the zombies had come from. So beastmen are already far stronger than ordinary prisoners to begin with, and after turning into zombies they become even harder to deal with, which is why he stepped in to save them. But at that moment, the beastman Gaku also turned into a zombie and slowly approached Ager. And Gaku was precisely the close friend of the eagle and the big rhino. The big rhino was so tense that his voice turned hoarse. "Sir, this guy is a beastman. Has he become a zombie too?" Ager sighed inwardly. He knew Gaku was their friend, but unfortunately, he had not been able to save him. In the next second, his figure moved, and with a swipe of his fingertips, he went straight for Gaku's neck. But the physical abilities of beastmen were stronger than those of ordinary races, and at the very last moment, Gaku forcibly stepped back and dodged it. Ager let out a low chuckle. A little trick, but beastmen really do react fast. The eagle only felt that this was absurd to the extreme. This old man could actually ignore the electric system and move as he pleased. Just what level had his strength reached? Even more terrifying, he could effortlessly evade Gaku's counterattack as well. The eagle could not understand why Ager's speed was so unbelievably fast. After failing to bring Ager down for so long, Gaku was clearly becoming more and more frenzied. With a roar, he directly began his beast transformation. Seeing this, cold sweat broke out on both the big rhino and the eagle. Once transformed, Gaku's combat power would surge dramatically, and his beast form was a canine man, specifically a Doberman, one of the fiercest of dogs. But Ager only said coldly, "Whether you transform or not, it makes no difference." In the next instant, Ager's figure flickered, and he first drove a kick into Gaku's lower abdomen. Then, using that brief opening, he circled behind Gaku. Ager's 5 fingers clamped down fiercely, his nails sinking directly into flesh, while his right leg locked around Gaku's neck, completely sealing his movements. With a flip of Ager's right hand, the spike dropped into his palm. Under the dazed stares of the big rhino and the eagle, he drove the spike viciously into the Doberman's neck. The eagle's body began trembling uncontrollably. His instincts were sounding a frantic alarm. If he wanted to survive in this prison, he had to follow the man before him. After dealing with Gaku, Ager shifted his gaze toward the two brothers' side. They were somehow still holding on. In the next second, he slammed the dog's head heavily onto the ground. The big rhino hurriedly asked Ager where he was going. Right now, he had no desire at all to leave Ager. This place was far too dangerous. But Ager did not answer and simply grabbed the spike and charged forward. His figure was as fast as a shadow, and in the blink of an eye he cut behind the zombies and began slaughtering them from the rear. In just a little over 10 seconds, he had cut down several more zombies. Seeing this, the blonde boy was so shocked that he lost his voice. Even the older brother was the same. Why was this old man this strong? At this moment, the prison cell had become Ager's personal slaughterhouse. The older brother's legs were nearly giving out from fright. He actually wiped out all the zombies over here. Just who exactly is this old man? 3 minutes later, the place had become completely quiet, and all the zombies had been dealt with. And the appearance of the zombies had been the work of the prison system from the start. All prisoners, stand up. Morning roll call will begin shortly. There had been a total of 94 people, of whom 80 were dead. Including Ager, 14 had survived. The other 13 stared at Ager in terror. If he had not intervened this time, they would have died long ago. At that moment, the prison system began replenishing the cell with more people. In the next instant, a flash of golden light appeared. A batch of prisoners was teleported in, and every face was filled with fear, because they were all newly arrived criminals, stepping into this prison for the first time. They had long heard of this place's horror across the universe, but only upon truly arriving did they realize they had still underestimated it. The moment they entered, they saw corpses all over the floor. The big rhino was too exhausted to stand and only wanted to catch his breath first. He had no strength left to care about the newcomers. After that, the prisoners scattered and found places to stay. And just like that, the morning roll call ended hastily. The bloodthirsty zombie flea would die on the spot after biting someone once. Now that all the infected zombies had been wiped out, the fleas should have been gone too. Just then, Ager's ear twitched slightly. He sniffed again, and a strange scent had mixed in. He immediately jumped down from above, preparing to leave this place. Then everyone saw Ager walk straight to a large door. The others were confused. What was the old man doing standing at the door? They saw Ager place his hand on the door. With only a light push, he pushed it open. Without paying any more attention to the prisoners behind him, he walked in alone. At that moment, some newcomers wanted to follow him out, but the eagle stopped them directly. If you want to die, then follow him. Use your brains. If the door isn't locked, why don't we go out? Because no one who has ever walked through that door has come back alive. There is a monster in that corridor. It could easily tear apart every prisoner here. The strength of that kind of monster is beyond your imagination. At this moment, Ager was only calmly following the scent ahead, as if he had run into an old acquaintance. Behind the door stood a goblin. Ager and he were old acquaintances, and this time the other party had come specifically to find Ager. Ager casually greeted him and asked what he wanted. Then the goblin, named Jacob, took out a long roll of paper. He wanted Ager to draw the map of this place on it, because the place had changed just the day before yesterday. Every change would completely renovate and reorganize the entire structure of the prison on a regular basis, and this process was called a shift. So remembering every path in the prison was almost impossible. But Ager only took a few minutes to draw the entire map perfectly. Jacob was astonished as he watched. No matter how many times he met Ager, all he could do was marvel. This was absurd. To express his gratitude, he handed Ager some food he had collected. This was exactly what Ager wanted. It seemed Jacob understood him well and had prepared these things on purpose. Before Jacob left, he also threw Ager a piece of high-level intelligence. He said that today, a summoning would occur in the low-level prisoner area. After hearing this, Ager sighed in a low voice. Quite a few people were going to die again. With that said, he stood and prepared to leave. Contact me if you need anything. But Jacob had one more sentence. Have those guys been bothering you lately? Ager paused for a moment, then understood whom he meant. In this prison, the only ones who would dare provoke Ager were probably them. He told Jacob not to worry. Those guys had been very quiet lately. After returning to the room, Ager touched the doorframe and discovered the words good storage carved on it. So-called good storage should refer to that child. At the same time, he also understood, the warden had deliberately arranged for him to enter this cell. Perhaps, for him, that was a good thing. Meanwhile, the prisoners in the room were practically about to explode. They smelled an extremely rich aroma of meat. At that moment, Ager took out the meat Jacob had given him and spread it directly on the ground. As the smell of meat burst out, a group of newcomers immediately lunged forward to grab it. But in the next second, an attack slammed hard into them. The eagle had made a move. I advise you not to provoke him, or you will definitely regret it. The big rhino also let out a roar and forcibly cowed more than a dozen people into retreat. Do you want me to twist off your arms first, or your legs? These newcomers had never seen anything like this before, and on the spot they were so frightened that they scattered in all directions. Ager let out a low laugh. Thanks, Sparrow brother. But the other party corrected him coldly. I'm a sea eagle. Seeing the meat, the blonde-haired boy swallowed hard. He had not eaten something like this in far too long. Hearing their stomachs growling, Ager said flatly, come eat, while it's hot. After a full meal, they had finally eaten something decent. The eagle was very courteous and solemnly thanked Ager, also thanking him for saving them in last night's zombie battle. But Ager said, you're wrong. The eagle froze, not understanding what he had said wrong. Ager's voice was very cold. In this prison, being alive is not worth gratitude, because being alive will turn you into a curse. I can smell the desire on you, but I still have to ask, do you really want to keep living here? Everyone was stunned. Who would not want to live? Was that not instinct? Ager continued asking, what if your instinct wanted you to die? For a moment, the eagle and the big rhino had no answer. How could instinct force someone to die? Ager stared at them. Even so, do you still want to go on living here? The eagle and the big rhino nodded at the same time. They did not want to die here. Zero also spoke up and said he wanted to live on, because he still had something he absolutely had to accomplish. After hearing that, Ager nodded in satisfaction. The agreed deadline is 66 years, and it's almost here. To achieve my goal, I need more companions. So Ager told them the intelligence Jacob had given him. All of you, get ready. A summoning will happen today. At the very moment his words fell, a burst of flame erupted from the center of the room. A two-headed, four-legged monster was forcibly summoned out. The moment it landed, it began spewing fire wildly. That thing was called a fire salamander. This scene left the prisoners with no time to react at all. And in the next second, some of them died directly in the sea of flames. Others reacted and tried to run, but were still caught and swallowed by the fire. Everyone felt that the fire salamander had gone mad. Was it trying to burn this whole place to ashes? The eagle hid behind a rock together with Ager and asked in a low voice, is this the summoning you were talking about? The flames were still spreading, and more people were dying. But Ager kept his voice low. Don't panic. As long as I'm here, you won't die. The moment it appeared, I had you turn this place into a temporary stronghold. As long as you stay here, you can survive. And I can sense it, it'll be charging at us soon. You must do exactly as I say.
Very soon.
The fire salamander changed direction and blasted flames straight toward them. Fortunately, there was a huge rock in front of the big rhino, blocking most of the fire and at least preserving their lives. Even if they were burned, they would not be directly incinerated to death. Taking advantage of the gap when the fire salamander paused to breathe, they hurled the mud they had prepared at it as hard as they could. Those who had not had time to shape mud simply smashed it with broken stones. The fire salamander was also a living creature, and it needed to breathe. except that it breathed through its skin. The eagle understood instantly. If mud covered its skin, it would have trouble breathing, its movements would slow, and its vision would also be obstructed. Only after reaching that point was it Aeger's turn to act. Aeger's figure flashed, so fast that even after images could not keep up, and he stabbed several bloody holes into the fire salamander in succession. In just 2 short minutes, he had completely killed the fire salamander. After the monster fell, the survivors finally dared to come out little by little from their hiding places. Just when they thought this summoning was about to end, another golden light lit up in the center of the cell. The moment Aeger heard that sound, his brows tightened instantly. This prison is determined to see us dead. It's actually summoning another fire salamander. Everyone was scared numb, because they knew very well their strength was nowhere near enough to defeat it. Immediately afterward, dozens of newly arrived prisoners were buried in the sea of flames. In truth, dealing with a fire salamander was not especially difficult, but preserving everyone's lives was almost impossible. The eagle asked Aeger in a low voice, "What do we do next?" Aeger made a decision that sent chills down everyone's spine: retreat into the corridor. The moment they heard that, several faces changed on the spot. But Aeger gave them no time to hesitate and directly ordered, "Follow me." The eagle's forehead was covered in sweat, whether from the heat or from fear, he did not know. The big rhino could no longer care about saving face, and tears streamed down his face. "Didn't you say it's even more dangerous outside? Then why are we all going into the corridor?" The eagle grabbed the big rhino at once. "Stop talking nonsense. Right now, only by following Aeger are we safe." In the brief moment the big rhino froze, the fire salamander behind him had already caught up. At the same time, Aeger's figure flashed and shot straight toward the big rhino. With a casual slash, he killed the fire salamander on the spot. "You just said you didn't want to die here for nothing. Then come with me." After witnessing that, none of them dared say another word. Wherever Aeger went, they followed. They walked all the way deeper inside. The eagle felt a chill in his heart. Even with his eyesight, he could not clearly see the road ahead. Was this the corridor that was even more dangerous than the cell? Aeger lowered his voice. "All of you, stay sharp. We may run into other prisoners here, especially level 3 and level 4. The moment you lose focus, they'll kill you." The eagle took the initiative to speak. "My eyesight is good. I'll watch the rear." Aeger nodded. "I'm leaving the back to you. Remember, absolutely do not fall behind." The eagle's instincts told him that something in the distance was staring at him. Very soon, he became even more certain. There was something in this corridor, and it was extremely dangerous. He immediately turned and said to Aeger, "I think it'd be safer to go back to the cell." But the moment he turned his head, he found that there was not a single person in front of him. The eagle instantly broke down in terror, and tears rushed out on the spot. "What's going on? Could I really be the only one left in the corridor? Where did old man Aeger go?" At the same time, on the other side, the big rhino was also anxiously calling out for his companions. Aeger coldly interrupted him. "Don't shout. There are too many dangerous things in the corridor. You're attracting monsters. If you want to stay alive, do as I say." The big rhino trembled with anger. He did not know whether he would ever find his companions again. Aeger told him not to panic. "Let's just hope that when we find him, he isn't a corpse." Then they continued deeper inside. Suddenly, Aeger stopped and sniffed the air. He sensed something wrong ahead and raised a hand to signal everyone to stop. They carefully hid in the rear and looked downward. Below them was a monster whose hands were as sharp as scissors. Aeger knew it. It was strong enough to easily kill level 5 prisoners. It's called Head Cutter. It has a habit. It specializes in cutting off its enemies' heads. And it has a violent temper, so you'd better not let it see us. The fact that it's appeared here means there are no safe zones left here. By contrast, things on the eagle's side had gone terribly badly. In the corridor, he had actually run into an ogre. He immediately used his flight ability and tried to escape, but the ceiling here was too low, and the terrain too complicated. He simply could not fly free. At the very moment he thought he could get away, a giant hand suddenly grabbed him. The eagle was so terrified his soul nearly scattered. One more bite, and he would be eaten. Then came a loud boom, and a figure slammed heavily into the ogre's arm, forcibly rescuing the eagle. The one who saved him had the face of a wild boar. This boar was not very large in build, yet with one strike of his club he could smash an ogre to death. The eagle was so stunned he could not speak. He had killed 2 ogres in a single exchange. The boar walked in front of the eagle and sternly demanded, "Why do you have that blind old man sent on you?" The eagle was so frightened that his voice went weak. "Are you talking about old man Aeger?" At that moment, several more people appeared behind him. The eagle looked up, and his heart nearly stopped. Standing before him were 3 giants, and each of them had a 4 tattooed on their neck. At that moment, he completely believed Aeger's words. "The old man didn't lie to me. This place really is full of level 4 criminals." By comparison, Aeger's side was actually luckier. Head Cutter had not noticed them. Otherwise, he would have been forced into another fight. The big rhino's face turned pale. "This corridor is terrifying. Next time, I'd rather die than come here again. Ager replied flatly. I think this place is good for a walk. It's not scary at all. If you're afraid, go back to the cell. The big rhino exploded instantly. I'm not a coward. I won't abandon my friends. If I can't get my companion back, I'm absolutely not going back. Ager nodded, his tone showing rare approval. That's what I like to hear. Then let's keep looking. The big rhino was still uneasy. Do you really know where my friend is? You'll see him soon enough. Don't worry. At this moment, the eagle was being gripped by the throat by the boar. I just share a dorm with him, that's all. I'm really not connected to him. The three behind the boar asked what was going on. The boar gritted his teeth and cursed, this guy carries that old man's scent. The three men's eyes widened instantly, and cold sweat broke out immediately. That blind old man was taboo here. Merely hearing his name made people shiver inside. The moment they heard Ager, they already wanted to turn around and run. Then a red-haired man spoke up and said he wanted to talk to the eagle. The eagle lay on the ground, his legs trembling weakly. Ask, I'll tell you everything. The red-haired man lowered his voice. Relax, we won't hurt you. There are many people in the prison watching old man Ager. If you stay close to him, those people will watch you too. Even if you had 10 lives, it wouldn't be enough. The eagle swallowed. The people you're talking about, who exactly are they? The man answered in a deep voice. They were monsters whom even these people did not dare meet eye to eye. So no matter what you do, be careful. In the next moment, this man released his ability. In only a short time, the injuries on the eagle's body were healed by him. He also chanted a spell to calm the mind. You can leave with peace of mind now. After doing all this, they turned and left, all the while muttering, thank goodness that terrifying old man isn't here. But for the eagle, he had become alone once again. After his body had recovered enough to move freely, he stepped into the darkness again to search for his companions. Not long after, the eagle heard the familiar voice of the big rhino. The big rhino immediately rushed over. You're still alive, thank goodness. Panting, the big rhino said, Ager led me to you. His nose is unbelievably sharp. Then he told Ager everything that had happened before. Someone who believed in the light constellation had healed his wounds. After hearing this, Ager remarked that he was lucky. Fortunately, the one he had met was not someone who believed in the empty seat. It turned out that there really were beings in the universe close to gods, known as the light constellation. Standing opposite them was the dark void seat. Whether they believed in the light or the dark, most of them were fanatics. They believed that faith could guarantee where they would go after death. It was the same in this prison, where the forces of faith were likewise divided into different factions. I didn't expect the little sparrow to survive the corridor. That means his growth potential is very high. Moreover, Ager really could smell an extremely strong desire to survive on him. I've tried many times before to raise fangs. It isn't hard, it just takes time. In the future, they will all become beings that make others tremble in fear. But the problem is, I don't have much time left, so they must grow quickly. Just then, Ager cursed under his breath, damn it. He told everyone to retreat at full speed immediately. The instant they turned around, a huge explosion erupted behind them. It turned out that the head cutter they had encountered earlier had caught up. Everyone was stunned. What rotten luck, to run into it again. But in Ager's mind, the eagle was even more unlucky. He had only just gotten his life back, and in the blink of an eye he was being hunted again. Running at the back, the eagle urgently asked Ager whether there was any way out. Since Ager had decided to train them, he could not abandon them here. Headcutter's target should be me, so I have to split up from you. There happened to be a passage ahead, and they dove into it without hesitation. Headcutter was too large, and for the moment it could not squeeze inside. Lowering his voice, Ager made the eagle remember this. Starting from the next fork, take them left, right, and you'll get back to the cell. Once you've gone far enough, I'll lure Headcutter in another direction. But in the very next second, relying on its terrifying destructive force, Headcutter forcibly smashed its way into the passage. They also took that chance to part ways completely. Just as Ager had judged, Headcutter's eyes were fixed on him. After Ager led the monster away, they finally won themselves a moment to catch their breath. At that moment, Brother suggested, will the old man really be okay? Should we go back and help him fight? Just as everyone was about to turn back, the eagle immediately stopped them. You're all thinking about this the wrong way. The old man has survived in this prison for so long, something we could never do, which means he has seen far more monsters than we can imagine. Him telling us to go back to the cell is the most correct choice. Going back would only hold him back and be no different from throwing our lives away. Meanwhile, on the other side, Headcutter actually spoke. Can't catch your breath? Legs hurting? Want me to help by chopping your legs off, so they won't hurt anymore? Why aren't you saying anything? At least leave a few last words. Ager merely asked calmly, you want to kill me? Of course I do. You tricked me back then. But Ager had no memory at all of tricking it about anything. That sent Headcutter into a rage. Exactly 4 years, 4 months, 13 days, 3 hours, 45 minutes, and 51 seconds ago, you said you wanted to play rock paper scissors with me. The monster's foul breath blasted over him, blowing Aeger's hair backward, but Aeger felt that something was even more wrong. By all rights, ghosts and monsters should not have a complete sense of self, much less say something like this, yet it could remember Aeger's words, which meant it had been sent by someone. Aeger formed a suspicion in his heart. Could it be Saddle? But Headcutter said it had never heard of Saddle and did not know him. Aeger raised a hand and scratched his ear. Saddle is that kid from 5 years ago. Grown up now, and he's actually ordering ghosts around. Headcutter let out a strange laugh. Old man, you really are impressive. How did you know it was me? That's not something easy to tell. Aeger was almost amused in spite of himself. He was blind, so how could he possibly have seen it? He had only been testing it casually. Saddle, the necromancer who belonged to the demon worshippers. In the next second, Aeger's aura suddenly exploded outward. 5 years, and you still don't understand? Compared with me, you're far too lacking. After saying that, he no longer restrained his killing intent. The instant that killing intent burst outward, even Headcutter instinctively felt a chill. The moment the hunt began, Headcutter was crushed before Aeger like an ant underfoot. After killing Headcutter, Aeger turned and regrouped with the eagle and the others. So they prepared to return to the cell together. But the instant they stepped back into the cell, Zero froze on the spot. Because everyone in the cell was dead, all that remained were charred corpses. Seeing such a horrific scene, Zero's stomach churned, and he immediately wanted to vomit. Aeger raised a hand and patted his shoulder. This is the reality of the prison. You have to learn to accept it. Suppressing his nausea, Zero asked Aeger in return, do you mean, the weak all die? Aeger frowned and corrected him. There is no distinction here between weak and strong. Anyone can die at any time. Hearing this, the eagle felt his heart tighten as he once again touched the true nature of this prison. This was a place where new people were constantly being thrown in every day, while people were also constantly dying. No matter how strong they were, any prisoner could suddenly disappear. The big rhino also understood the horror of this place even more clearly. Kill, dispose of, replenish, then kill again. That was how the system operated. Very soon, it was time for the head count. This round totals 95 people, of whom 90 died, with 5 survivors. Because this cell is now severely understaffed, the remaining personnel need to be reassigned to another cell. This notice made everyone's scalp go numb. The instant the golden light descended, Zero immediately wrapped himself tightly around Brother. At the same time, Aeger also stood up. There's no time to explain. Listen carefully. After the cell change, you may be separated. Brother immediately pulled Zero into his arms. There was no way he could be separated from his younger brother. In the end, Aeger threw out one final sentence. Remember, after the cell change there will be release and open if you're sent to the forest, run toward the sea, remember that. They memorized his words, but they were completely unable to act. The intense dizziness also left them unable to speak. When Aeger opened his eyes again, he was already indoors, so this was release, not open. He cursed under his breath. Damn it, had everyone really been split up? Those were all seedlings worth cultivating. Instead, Zero and Aeger had been teleported to the same place. The warden's intention was obvious. Aeger was not to think about anything else and should focus on managing this commodity. Zero was still shouting his brother's name. Maybe he's already run off somewhere else. Aeger guessed that he would soon be meeting the warden, and before that happened, he had to sharpen this child as quickly as possible in exchange for what he wanted. After all, he did not have much time left and had to train usable helpers as quickly as possible to accomplish his goal. Aeger told Zero not to run around. This cell was about 2,000 square meters, 4 times the size of the previous one. Judging by the sounds, there were about 300 criminals here. At that moment, the sound of a woman's footsteps slowly approached. This red-haired woman was called Rosna, the overlord of the cell. Rosna instructed the people behind her, bring that blonde-haired child over here. A prisoner immediately stepped forward, grabbed Zero, and dragged him over roughly. Zero was so frightened that his face turned deathly pale. He kept calling for Aeger, but Aeger stood where he was without the slightest reaction. Zero could not understand why he was pretending not to see. Zero panicked even more and struggled, telling the prisoner to let him go. Then he looked toward Rosna in front of him. That woman made people feel cold with just one glance, and he wanted nothing to do with getting close to her. In his extreme terror, Zero's face began to twitch, and he even started foaming at the mouth. The prisoner holding him froze. What's wrong with him? Why did he suddenly collapse and start convulsing? Rosna flew into a rage. Low-level trash, and you can't even handle something this simple. Aeger, however, watched with a calm face. He was finally about to see the true value of this commodity. At that moment, Zero's face turned purple, and his body bent backward at a bizarre angle. The prisoner gave him a casual glance and discovered that this child seemed to have changed. Aeger was also waiting inwardly. Hurry up, show me what you've got. At this point, Zero was no longer in a child's form, but had transformed into the shape of an adult beastman. Let me see just how much you're worth. Rosna burst out laughing. Interesting. When he gets desperate, he bites back. Raising him is definitely going to be fun. Bring him over here. The moment the order came down, the prisoner immediately shouted at Zero, "Get over here now." But in the next second, Zero charged at him instead. He swept a claw across, and the prisoner barely dodged. The prisoner's face darkened. He could not kill Zero on the spot, so he could only suppress his anger and try to subdue him. But after several exchanges, he found that he actually could not suppress Zero. Another prisoner cursed loudly. "What the hell are you doing? You can't even catch one little brat, useless." As soon as he said that, his figure flashed, and he appeared behind Zero almost as if teleporting, bringing his hand down hard on Zero's head. After striking Zero, he turned around and slapped the other prisoner across the face. Lady Rosna is watching. "You can't even pin down a child, aren't you ashamed?" At the same time, Ager slowly stepped forward and stood directly in front of them. The two men were both confused and furious. "You crazy old man think you can block our way too? Get lost." Ager still did not move, and one of them raised a hand to teach him a lesson. It was as if a slice of time had been cut away. Before he could even strike, he had already been slammed to the ground by Ager. The other prisoner saw this and instantly panicked. The same scene fell on him in the very next second. Ager smashed down with one punch, so heavily that he had no time even to react. In just 3 seconds, everyone who had surrounded them was taken down by Ager. Rosna narrowed her eyes, finding it amusing. Even an old man dared make trouble in front of her. Ager paid her no attention at all and only looked at Zero. Even if he awakened and lost control, he still couldn't beat a level 2 prisoner. But he's still this young, and his talent is already enough. As long as I teach him a little more, he can become something of value. I will train him personally. Behind him, Rosna became displeased. "You may be old, but you've got some nerve. You hurt my people, and you still dare stand there so steadily?" Ager replied lightly that at his age, there truly was not much left to fear. Rosna's eyes turned cold, and she became serious. "I'll tie up your hands and feet, then whip you until you beg for mercy." The whip in her hand cracked sharply through the air. At that very moment, a man's figure came rushing in from the distance at high speed. Rosna looked disgusted. "You always make this much noise every time you show up. I saw them first, so don't interfere." This powerfully built man was called Magan, likewise one of the overlords of the cell. He stared at Rosna. "Leave, while I'm still willing to speak nicely. If you don't leave, I'll start a war with you right here." Instead, Rosna grew excited. "A war will come sooner or later. What difference does it make whether it starts earlier or later? I can start one anytime." Magan did not waste any more words either. "Then let's start." After that, Magan's underlings slowly pressed forward. Rosna was startled. "You old fox, you had your people surround this place first, and then came out to provoke me?" If they really fought, both sides would only end up damaged, and Biken would profit from it, so Rosna decided to avoid battle for now. She turned and left, tossing out a final sentence that one day she would make Magan regret this. But Ager did not know Magan, nor was his scent familiar. "Why did you help me?" Magan laughed loudly. "You forgot? I'm Magan. A year ago in the forest, you saved my life." He also understood what kind of person Ager was. "Even if you forgot, I could never forget that day. To tell the truth, I can't remember anything at all. If it was in the forest, then it must have happened during open. Could it be that while I was hunting the natives, I saved you along the way?" Magan dropped straight to his knees before Ager. "No matter how much time passes, the fact that you saved me will never change. Please allow me to follow you." Then he roared at the underlings behind him. "What are you all standing there for? Come greet him. This man will be your boss from now on." In the next second, Ager's ears were filled with a perfectly unified chorus. "Greetings, boss." Ager felt a bit of a headache. He had not heard anyone call him boss in many years. The scene shifted, and Sierra woke from a nightmare. But the moment he opened his eyes, he froze. Magan explained, "This was cell number 4. The forces here were divided into 3 factions, and the one he led was Magan's Axe faction. That woman with the whip from earlier belonged to Rosna's faction. The last faction was the swordsman Bikan's faction. The leaders of all 3 factions were level 3 prisoners, keeping one another in check, so this place had maintained a delicate balance all along. Release was about to begin, and each faction had sent people to search around the cell. Magan said he had been here for 3 years, and it was only because Ager had saved him back then that he had the chance to build his own faction. Ager told him not to apologize and instead said he should be thanked for bringing useful information. He wanted to rest now, so Magan tactfully withdrew and said he would get him something to eat. 3 minutes later, Magan brought over a plate of poisonous insects, yet Ager ate them as naturally as if it were nothing unusual. Ciro's eyes reddened. "You didn't help me just now. Was it because I'm too weak and too useless?" Ager paused when he heard that, realizing the child did not remember his brief awakening at all. "Child, if I hadn't done anything about you just now, you wouldn't be by my side now." Ciro felt a pang in his heart, but also a bit of warmth. Without his brother, he could do nothing, and now he had instead become Ager's burden. Ager cut off his train of thought. Don't overthink it. You were wrong from the very beginning. Whether you're strong or not is not for you to decide. It's for your opponent to decide. I want you to survive in this prison. When you need help, I will help you. I will teach you how to drive away the darkness in your heart, and then become strong. Zero could hardly believe it. I can really become stronger? Ager told him to do one thing before becoming stronger. Eat. In this prison, there is only one thing I fear most. Hunger. Hunger is harder to endure than any pain. If your stomach is empty, you cannot possibly become stronger. That is reality. So if you want to become stronger, eat it. Zero's throat tightened. He did not want to eat these things at all, but he wanted even more to become stronger. He clenched his teeth and swallowed the nauseating food. For as long as he could become stronger, he would no longer have to be a burden to anyone. At this moment, Rosna was kneeling before a red bead. The red bead spoke and asked, "How is the progress?" Rosna replied that the life force had already gathered halfway, and it should be completed before the next open. As for anything else, there was nothing unusual. Today it was only an old man bringing a child, and she did not think they were worth noticing. The moment the bead heard the words old man, it visibly trembled. Explain clearly about this old man. Rosna described Ager, long hair hanging loose, eyes wrapped in bandages. The bead trembled even more violently. Are you sure? After Rosna confirmed it, the bead immediately manifested. I'm going there right now. Rosna was shocked and quickly declared that she would capture the old man before the other side arrived. The bead laughed. And you think you're worthy of laying a hand on him? But after thinking for a moment, it decided not to reveal the old man's identity. Since you're so confident, then go kill him. Rosna stood up and said she would use the authority bestowed by the bead to kill the old man. Rosna's aura surged sharply. I will definitely deliver the prey you want right before you. Meanwhile, Ager began truly teaching Zero the real stuff. The reason he was training Zero was because the child's talent was absurdly high. Finally, on the second day of training, they successfully entered Zero's inner world. Ager slowly said, "Now, we are going to enter your inner world." He reminded Zero that he had to maintain his breathing rhythm, otherwise he could be forced out at any moment, and it could even cause serious trouble. Zero answered softly, "Mm." In the next second, a force pressed toward him head-on and dragged Zero into the depths of his inner self. When he regained his senses, he found that everything around him was pitch black. A chill ran through Zero's heart. Just a moment ago he had been sitting, and now it felt as if he had been thrown into another world. Ager told him to steady himself. "Stay calm. I'm right beside you. This is your inner world." Ager told him that there was only one thing he needed to do, understand the darkness here, and only then could he become stronger. Zero took one step forward. The instant his foot touched the ground, a ring of colored light spread across the floor. In the next second, memories from Zero's childhood surfaced. He saw his parents standing before him, and tears instantly welled up in his eyes. Ager's heart sank, and he immediately shouted to stop him. "Stop. Don't look at the ground anymore." Ager made him listen carefully. "Keep your breathing steady. Do not let it fall into disorder, otherwise you will be forcibly ejected, and something may even go wrong." Zero could also feel his mind beginning to blur. If this continued, it really would not work. After a while longer, Zero suddenly opened his eyes and forcibly withdrew from his inner world. And the scenes he had just seen were all the darkness of his inner world. You must learn to face your own darkness. That is the foundation of your becoming stronger. Ager made him remember that the bloodline inside him was his strongest weapon. Zero looked at his own arm in disbelief. He had never seen himself in this kind of state before. Soon, Zero's stomach began to growl. It was time for his meal. Not long after, Majin brought over today's food. Zero sharply noticed that every time he ate, the uncles across from him showed expressions of disgust. It seemed he was eating into their share of the rations. At the same time, Rosna actually came looking for them and called Magin out to deliver the goods. Magin stared at Rosna with obvious disgust. "Don't stand in front of me shouting like I owe you something." After that, Magin had his men gather up the corpses of those who had died yesterday. These corpses belonged to members who had died while Magin led people out hunting yesterday. Rosna looked very satisfied. 2 on our side died as well. Watching from behind, Zero was so dumbfounded that he was nearly scared senseless on the spot. Ager told him to steady himself. This was their food. They would exchange the dead, and then eat them. This kind of thing was very common in this prison. If they did not do this, there simply would not be enough food for so many people to survive. Zero could no longer suppress the urge to vomit, but Ager stopped him. "What you ate was monster meat. Throwing it up will harm your body." In a very heavy tone, Ager warned him. "No matter how hungry you get in the future, you must never eat people. Monsters and insects, you can eat those however you want. But if you become like them, then there will be no saving you." 3 minutes later, the third overlord of the cell appeared. The moment Magin saw him, he stepped forward and asked how today's harvest had gone. But unexpectedly, Bikin had no intention of sharing the spoils with Magin at all. Magan could only apologize to Ager in a low voice. He isn't willing to share the spoils, so today we'll have much less food. And Bikin least wants to see conflict break out in this room, because he wants to turn everyone into his subordinates. At this moment, Bikin wanted to speak with Ager alone, but Siro could smell a very strong odor on Bikin. That smell was the smell of blood. Ager told Siro to go back first while he talked with Bikin himself. After that, Siro was guarded by 2 underlings, both of whom looked displeased. While others were dividing up food, they had to watch a child. But as they kept watching, they actually began to drool. This child's meat had to be tender. A chill ran through Siro's heart, and he was almost on the verge of breaking down. Here, he even began to doubt whether he could really become strong like Ager. There were too many strong people. With his current bit of strength, there was no way he could survive on his own until tomorrow. An hour later, Ager returned, and Siro said Ager was the strongest fighter he had ever seen. He could not help smiling as he asked, "Are you human?" Ager was rendered speechless by the question. "If I'm not human, then who is standing in front of you?" Siro was already close to treating Ager like a god. "You're different from everyone I know. Can you use chi, or magic?" Siro had guessed only half right. Ager could not use magic, but he really could control chi. Ager asked what else he wanted to know and told him to ask everything at once, because they still had to train later. Siro then asked how old Ager was. "I'm 88 years old. I don't really have hobbies. What I like most is taking walks in the corridor. As for friends, I do have 2, and they're both the most reliable backs I have. One looks cold, but his heart is warm. The other looks like a bear." His last question was why Ager had come to this prison. When Ager heard that, he clearly paused. Then he said in a low voice, "My wife died. I came here because of her. She was very beautiful, and when she smiled, she shone. I'll tell you about that another time." After hearing this, Siro also felt so distressed that he could not say anything, and afterward Ager left. But not long later, a rumbling tremor suddenly came from the ground. What happened next shook Siro to his core. He saw a whip coil around someone and yank them into the air. That whip was far too familiar to him. Rosna's figure pressed directly in front of Siro. "Tell me where that old man went." Siro's pupils were full of fear. Ager was not here, and on his own he had no idea what to do. And the look in that woman's eyes was as if she wanted to tear him apart. The pressure she gave off was suffocating. In the next second, Rosna lashed Siro until his skin split and his flesh tore. When the whip struck his body, the pain was so intense he nearly bit his teeth apart. Rosna, however, frowned. Wasn't this the little brat from yesterday who could transform? Forcing himself through his fear, Siro warned her, "If you dare touch me, something terrible will happen." Rosna flew into a rage. "You still dare threaten me?" But at that very moment, Siro's body began to mutate violently. Rosna's eyes turned feverish. "Good. I want to see you transform." The moment Siro completed his transformation, he lunged straight at Rosna. Rosna met him head-on with her whip, and she actually hoped he would last a bit longer, otherwise she would find it boring. But Siro was too young and only knew how to fight on animal instinct. Rosna easily dodged his attacks, then looped the whip around his ankle in one swift motion. With a twist of her wrist, Siro was flung away. In a single exchange, Siro was smashed flat onto the ground. Rosna laughed loudly. "Nice little dog. I'll keep you for now. Stay obediently by my side. Next, we'll see how that old man chooses." Meanwhile, Ager was eating with the 2 major overlords of the cell. Bikan's expression was grave. "You're old man Ager, aren't you? I have a question for you." He thought Ager was very unusual, especially because there was no rank mark on his neck, and he wanted to know why. Ager said that he had entered the prison when it was first established, and at that time there had been no rank divisions at all. Magan laughed loudly. "The fact that the old man has lived this long already proves he's strong. And during open, he even saved me in the forest." The 3 of them fell briefly silent. Bikan was deeply shaken. This was the first time he had ever seen a prisoner without a branded rank. Bikan was also someone who respected strength, and he released a trace of killing intent, wanting to test whether Ager truly had that level of power. In the next second, within the world of thought, Bikan severed Ager's head with one sword strike. There was no wind in this prison, yet Magan inexplicably felt a chill on his back. Not only did Ager detect that killing intent, he even saw in his own world of thought what Bikan had done to him. The moment Bikan saw Ager's expression, he understood the answer. Magan shivered, not knowing why he suddenly felt cold. Ager slowly stood up, preparing to head back first. After all, there was still a child in his room waiting to be fed. After Ager left, Bikan unconsciously tightened his grip on the sword on the ground. That killing intent had been so faint that even Magan had not noticed it, yet Ager had noticed it and shown no reaction at all. That alone was enough to prove that Ager was a true powerhouse. "Ager, I will remember you." Meanwhile, on the other side, Siro had already been taken away by Rosna. Rosna was full of excitement. This newly snatched pet suited her taste perfectly. She wanted to see how long Siro could endure under her torment. Siro's heart ached with pain and regret, If he had known he would be beaten this badly, he should have obediently become a pet from the start. At least he would not die, and there would still be a chance to reunite with his brother. At this moment, a subordinate ran over to report, "The old man you were looking for is right in front of their territory." A flash of joy rose in Siro's heart. Ager must have come to save him. But the subordinate's face was pale. That old man didn't come alone. There are many people following behind him, and those people only listened to him. Soon, both sides confronted each other in front of the main gate. When Rosna came out and looked, even she was a little astonished. She had only tied up a pet, yet it had drawn so many people. She immediately showed disdain. One of the mighty overlords of the cell is actually currying favor with an old man? Aren't you ashamed to let that get out? Magan instantly burst into curses. "You crazy woman, how dare you spout nonsense in front of my benefactor?" Ager raised a hand to stop Magan, telling him not to waste words, and spoke directly to Rosna. "Release my friend." But Rosna was not swayed at all. "I caught him, so he's mine. Who told you not to protect him well enough? In this prison, it's hard to find another gem this cute. So no matter what you say, I will not let that child go." Ager found her laughable. She had no idea what that child truly meant. "If you keep him by your side, the only end waiting for you is death." Rosna did not believe him. In her eyes, this was nothing but bluffing. Magan could not hold back and raised his blade, ready to charge forward and cut Rosna down. But Ager felt there was no need. "Go back." After saying that, Ager actually turned around and left alone. After returning, Ager thought to himself, it would not matter if he rescued him a little later. They would not kill Siro. And they could not kill Siro either. The merchandise would not be harmed, because that powerful warden would always be watching the course of the whole matter. And just at that moment, Ager's nose twitched. He smelled a very familiar scent. Even if Siro had not asked today, I still would have remembered my former companion. When Ager reached the corridor, he heard a voice. It's truly been a long time. The owner of that voice was the very person Ager had mentioned to Siro today. The friend who looked cold on the outside but was warm inside. Ager spoke to her. "Looks like you saw me while passing by." The woman before him was named Alice, her long hair falling down around her. She said, "The concentration of darkness is too high. I couldn't pretend not to see it, so I followed over to say hello. How has your health been lately?" One sentence from Ager made her freeze. "My health is terrible. I may not have much time left." Hearing this, Alice decided to help Ager clear out the prisoners in the cell. She sensed that several servants of demon worshippers were mixed in there. But Ager refused. The merchandise she had to protect was still inside. "If you clean it out, he will die too. So go find your sister, and give her my regards while you're at it." Hearing that, Alice let out a light laugh. "I'll pass it on." Alice's footsteps seemed as if she were stepping on air. In the next second, she suddenly embraced Ager. "If you need anything, just tell her at any time. You are their benefactor." The moment those words fell, she disappeared. Ager sneered inwardly. "No matter how useless I may become, it still won't come to the point where I need a child to help me." Then he pushed open the cell door. "Looks like I really am old. In the past, I would only solve problems head-on, but now it's different." The moment Ager stepped into the room, he triggered the no-standing system. Lightning began to restrict his movements, but to him it posed no threat at all. Looking at the prisoners lying on the ground, Ager slowly drew out his weapon. "Today I'll make these disobedient people remember this. If reason won't work, then I'll go around the rules. Kill everyone, then take the merchandise away." Not long after, a subordinate hurriedly woke Rosna up. Rosna was very displeased at being awakened, but the subordinate was panicking and told her to come out and look immediately. The subordinate hurriedly reported, "At daybreak, many of our brothers had already met with disaster." Rosna was shocked on the spot. This prison had the no-standing system, and everyone in the cell would wake up at the same time. She simply did not believe anyone could launch a sneak attack during sleeping hours. But when she saw corpses strewn everywhere, her whole body instantly stiffened. Right after that, anger surged up and madly devoured her reason. Rosna abruptly reacted and turned to rush toward the room in the back. There, she saw the handcuffs had been pried open, and the person was already gone. Rosna furiously cracked her whip. It must have been that old man. She immediately gathered all the remaining people, preparing to go take revenge. Ager looked at Siro. "You drank so much water the moment you woke up. How do you feel?" Siro dropped to his knees on the spot. "Thank you for saving me again. After going through this, I understand that I'm still far too weak." Siro raised his eyes and looked straight at Ager. "Grandpa, I want to become stronger." Ager nodded. This child had at least some understanding. At this moment, Magan walked in, and the moment he saw Siro, he was startled. How did this child get back? Ager told Magan that he had brought him back himself. "Hurry up and take stock. Prepare to move. It just so happens we need to talk with Bikan." Not long afterward, Ager, Magan, and Bikan were discussing matters when Rosna directly led people over to attack. Ager ignored the surrounding commotion and only looked at the two in front of him, waiting for them to make their choice. Rosna directly shouted, "You damned old man, get out here." Magan immediately shouted back, "You crazy woman, do you really want war?" Rosna stared fixedly at Ager. "You killed my people and took that child away, didn't you?" Ager was instantly speechless. Can't she first figure out the situation she's in now? Rosna could not believe that even an old man dared to face her head-on. Ager could not be bothered with her and only told the two leaders to seriously consider his proposal. Magan glanced sideways at Rosna. "Of course I agree." Bikin also spoke. "We will suffer some losses, but it should be acceptable." Ager looked at Rosna. "The proposal I gave them is very simple. Since 40 people are already dead, we might as well hold a banquet today and capture the remaining 60 people as slaves." Rosna was dumbfounded on the spot, so this was the move they had been calculating. Originally, each of the three factions had 100 people, and only then could the balance barely be maintained. But now the other side had 200 people, while she only had 60 left. She had no chance of winning at all. Fear instantly crawled into Rosna's heart. In the next second, those 200 people surged toward Rosna like a tidal wave. She finally understood completely. There were simply too many people on the other side. There was no way this battle could be won. Ager coldly walked past the edge of the slaughter, as if none of it had anything to do with him. Rosna also snapped back to herself, swinging her whip and lashing at the crowd rushing toward her like a madwoman. But in the end, she was outnumbered and was directly pierced through by blades and swords. Afterward, Ager came to Rosna's territory, where a bead was hanging above. As he played with it, he suddenly understood. This was the bead of vital energy, formed from the vital energy of the cell. Ager directly drew the vital energy from the bead into his mouth. He immediately felt that he could live a few more days. Ager said softly to the bead, "This pile of troubles has made me delay the time I was supposed to go see the warden." "Darkus, you're listening, aren't you? Last time, I forcibly severed Thaddle's connection to the ghostly creature. He hasn't already turned into an idiot, has he? Don't come looking for me again, or I'll make you regret it." At this moment, on the other side of the bead, that old man is saying so much nonsense. Is he scared? Ager pinched the bead between two fingers, making it crack. "You think I would be afraid of you? The only end for people who keep hounding me is death." With that, he crushed the bead directly. At this moment, inside cell 6879, the level 8 criminal, the vampire king Enduras, was elegantly sipping red wine. Just then, someone suddenly barged into the cell. The newcomer was the level 8 criminal and commander of the demon-worshipping legion, Darkus. Enduras looked at the intruding Darkus. "Next time, can't you show some manners?" Darkus replied directly, "Aren't you just like me, one of the followers of the Void Seat in loneliness? Then join me in dealing with Ager. He turned one of my disciples into an idiot. That disciple is very important to me." Enduras refused outright, but sneered inwardly. Since when did black magicians care about master and disciple? In the end, wouldn't they still devour each other? But he still reminded Darkus, "You can't afford to provoke the old man." Darkus found it laughable and instead mocked Enduras for being a coward. After saying that, he turned around and left. Enduras muttered in a low voice, "What a reckless little fool. Against the old man. Does he really think he can do it? Among this group of lonely criminals, could it be that no one has ever thought of dealing with him? And yet he is only human, but he has endured in loneliness for decades and still remains alive. If that doesn't say enough, then what does?" Meanwhile, another battlefield had already come to an end, and everyone was dividing the spoils of victory. One subordinate was reporting the gains from this battle to Bikan. Bikan looked at the old man. He had both the mind to lay plans and the decisiveness to bring down the blade. He then spoke and asked whether the old man would be willing to join his faction. Ager politely refused. Bikan did not understand. Why? Ager told him that he was old and no longer suited for fighting and killing. Magan laughed. "Old man, so you still want to come over to my side after all?" But Ager said he had no interest, only that he had been busy taking care of a child lately. The two of them were stunned on the spot. In prison, taking care of a child? A few days passed like this, and Ager told Ciro it was time to enter his inner world again. Ciro asked in confusion why, and Ager only replied, "If you want to find the path that suits you, you must do this." Then he told Ciro to sit still. "We're starting." In just a moment, Ciro arrived in his inner world once again. Ager's voice rang out. "How many times has it been since you came in here? Today, try walking farther forward." Ciro was actually very puzzled. He had always thought Ager would teach him combat techniques, but Ager kept making him train by entering his inner world. Beneath his feet, those memories he least wanted to recall kept appearing. Those memories were things he would rather be beaten and wounded than touch again. But he knew there had to be a reason his grandpa was making him do this. At that moment, Ciro reached the cliff at the end and asked Ager what he should do next. But Ager told him to keep walking forward, and Ciro froze on the spot. Ager said coldly, "If you want to become stronger, then walk forward." Sweat covered Ciro's face, and fear weighed on him, but he had to become stronger. With trembling steps, he walked toward the cliff. step by step, until his foot stepped into empty air. At that moment, Ager warned him, if someone talks to you, do not answer no matter what. After that, Ager's voice completely disappeared from Siro's mind. Right after that, a voice came from beneath Siro's feet and drilled into his ears. Siro kept his mouth tightly shut, not daring to make a sound, but the whispering at his ear kept pressing him with questions. Can't you hear me? Or are you running away again? That makes sense. You've always been a coward, only able to cling to others like a bug just to stay alive. Your parents and the villagers were taken away because of you. You're a coward. You can't even control your blessed bloodline. Go die. As Siro listened to each sentence, it felt as if his chest were being crushed, and even breathing became difficult. Then, from the corner of his eye, he saw that monster. The moment their eyes met, the monster lunged straight at Siro to bite him. At the critical moment, Ager reached out and forcefully dragged Siro back. The instant Siro opened his eyes, veins bulged across his body. It was obvious he still had not pulled himself out of the fear from just now. Ager looked at him and said flatly, "Congratulations. You faced the darkness in your heart." Only then did Siro realize that his body seemed to have grown larger. Ager told Siro that from here on, whatever he wanted to learn, Ager would teach him. Then Ager told Siro to attack him with all his strength. "I'll train your combat skills until you can survive." Before the words had even finished, Ager threw a punch at Siro, and Siro actually dodged it with a quick shift. But the next second, Ager's second punch had already followed. The force of the punch suddenly exploded, and Siro was sent flying directly. Then Ager told him, "If you want to improve your combat ability, you must learn several methods. First, fight by instinct. Learn to draw on the most primitive instinct in your inner world. Your strength after transforming is indeed powerful, but your moves are too easy to read. Stop thinking and strike by instinct. Feel that urge to destroy everything." As Ager watched Siro pounce at him, he could tell the child's talent was very strong. He had already grasped the feeling and had begun relying on instinct to look for Ager's openings. At first, his attacks only targeted the head, but now he had started changing positions and striking at other parts. He was attacking by feel, while Ager merely raised his hand again and again to block. He gets it after being taught once. This talent really is strong. Seeing that his goal had been achieved, Ager raised his hand and slapped Siro away. Then he said the second method was getting beaten. The moment the words fell, before Siro could even react, Ager instantly threw countless punches. As Siro was sent flying, Ager said coldly, "A person who has felt pain and a person who hasn't are not the same." Immediately after, Ager slammed another punch into Siro's chest. Then came an endless barrage of heavy blows. Does this brat really think dodging the first punch was enough? Only after beating Siro to the ground until he could no longer stand did Ager stop. Ager looked at the unconscious Siro. Looks like the third method will have to wait until next time. He grew this much the first time he learned techniques. His talent is even higher than I thought. After Siro fell unconscious, memories of the past kept replaying in his mind. He knew it was only a dream, but he still could not bear to wake up. Even if his father favored his brother, even if his father did not love him, even if his father was terrible and threw him into loneliness, he still missed him. Tears slid from the corners of Siro's eyes as he slowly opened them. Ager examined Siro's body and sighed softly. As expected, a werewolf's recovery ability is strong. Ager brought Siro to the highest point of the cell building and told him to focus and look at the criminals over there. Siro only saw that all the criminals were lying down asleep. Seeing the confusion in Siro's eyes, Ager told him, "That's right, it's sleeping time right now. How does it feel to overcome the no-standing system? Only those who face the darkness in their hearts can break this prison's rules." Siro stared at his own hands in disbelief. "So I can become like Grandpa too." As Ager watched the merchandise grow so quickly, he knew clearly that he would soon be able to trade it for pills that slowed aging. Over the years, he had overused his power, and this body had long since stopped being able to endure it. He had avoided this for so long, and it was time to end it. And besides, there was the Death Warlock saddle, the Whip Witch Rosna, and the demon-worshipping Legion Commander Darkus who commanded them. Ager had been avoiding them all this time, but sooner or later he would have to face them. It's time to make a move. At this moment, everyone in the cell was checking their weapons, because release could begin at any time. Looking at the busy crowd, Siro asked in confusion, "Why is everyone so busy?" Ager answered, "Today is release day. Release is a system created to deal with all kinds of preparations by criminals. Today, many people will die." At that moment, a virtual window suddenly popped up in midair inside the cell. A voice came from the window. "Release is about to begin." Immediately after, a golden light enveloped everyone. Everyone was forcibly teleported by the golden light to the lower corridor of 8972. Many criminals were experiencing release for the first time. They looked around nervously, their expressions tight. Ager told them, "Once the system starts, no matter the prisoner's rank, everyone is forcibly thrown into the corridor. And you all know what kind of place the corridor is. If you want to live, return to the cell immediately." At that moment, Ager suddenly sensed the enemy closing in. Zero hurriedly turned back and saw a densely packed goblin army charging toward them. Cold sweat instantly broke out on Zero. This number was way too outrageous. But Ager told him to get ready. Today, he would stack up enough real combat experience through release. At that moment, the other prisoners also discovered the goblins, and Zero directly transformed into a beastman. Holding his awl, Ager said to Zero, "Fight with everything you have. If you don't want to die, don't stop." At this moment, the prisoners had already begun fighting fiercely against the goblin army. A single goblin was not strong, but their numbers were enough to suffocate people. Zero swung his claws wildly through the goblin horde, sending blood and flesh flying. But he suddenly stopped. Standing before him was a small goblin, and for an instant Zero felt pity. In the next second, the goblins beside it launched a direct sneak attack, and blades stabbed into Zero's chest like raindrops. That small goblin raised its head and revealed a cruel smile. Zero immediately understood. He had been tricked. At that moment, Ager's figure flashed past, and in the next second those goblins had already been cut into two. Ager told Zero, "In battle, you must never hesitate. What you need to learn now is to turn killing into a habit. In loneliness, if you do not kill, others will kill you. Do not go soft." Zero clenched his teeth as he looked at the continuing tide of goblins charging at him, and nothing remained in his heart but anger. His claws rose and he slaughtered madly among them. Ager said to Zero, "Here, the gap in combat power between one rank and the next is more than tenfold. So no matter how many enemies there are, you have no need to be afraid. Goblins are so weak they don't even qualify for a rank. They're only fit to be stepping stones for your growth." Before long, goblin corpses were densely strewn all around them. After the goblins were cleared out, the gate at the end of the corridor slowly opened. Several branching paths appeared behind the gate, and Ager asked them which route they planned to take. Magan preferred the main road, where enemies would be easier to defend against if they appeared. Biken, however, insisted on taking the side path. Watching them argue, Ager immediately sensed that something was wrong. These two were acting. He said quietly to Zero, "The moment I run, follow me immediately." In the next second, Ager directly charged into the side passage and sprinted, and Zero followed him closely. Magan and Biken had not expected Ager to suddenly withdraw, and they froze where they stood. Only when Zero was almost out of breath from running did Ager stop. Zero asked Ager, "Grandpa, why are we running?" Ager told him, "The more people there are, the easier it is to become a target." The safest way to handle release was to return to the cell in groups, yet they wanted to take everyone together. That was far too suspicious, and despite this being their first time experiencing release, they were not afraid at all. Zero asked curiously, "Is it because there's someone backing them?" Ager sighed, "Even a child could see it." At that moment, a series of footsteps reached their ears. Biken came over with his men, his tone cold. "I didn't expect him to come looking for us personally." Ager asked, "Where's Magan?" Biken replied, "We split up. We couldn't agree, so we each went back to the cell on our own." Ager exposed him directly. "Your acting is too poor. Stop pretending. The first time the three of us sat together, I already saw through your identities. You've gotten so used to drinking blood, so the one you follow is the Vampire King Endura's, right?" Since he had been exposed, Biken stopped pretending as well. "My Lord Count asked me to politely invite you over for a visit." Ager refused on the spot, and Biken revealed a savage smile when he heard that. He drew his blade, intending to make Ager go see his master lying down. Only then did Zero realize what had happened. No wonder the pressure had grown heavier the closer they came, and the bloody smell on Biken was so strong it stung the nose. So he was actually a vampire. Then Ager directly activated Beastman transformation. Biken suddenly understood. "No wonder you always keep this little brat with you. So he's a werewolf." But Ager said he was wrong. Zero's brother was obviously a werewolf, but Zero's bloodline was different. His identity was that of a pureblood werewolf, a lycanthrope. Even Ager had not expected him to grow this fast. As expected, he's very talented. He then said to Zero, "Leave the little underlings to me." Zero answered and charged straight at Biken. Biken grinned viciously. "You really dare rush me." But unexpectedly, after several exchanges, they were actually evenly matched. Meanwhile, on Ager's side, a single strike swept away a whole group of underlings. When he charged toward the remaining underlings, he directly cut open his palm. Fresh blood splashed over the heads of the other prisoners. The moment they smelled that sweet, bloody scent, they immediately started fighting over it like madmen. Taking advantage of their loss of control, Ager harvested lives wildly. The moment Biken saw this, he instantly realized things had gone bad. He suddenly exerted force and kicked Zero flying away. Biken sniffed the sweetness in the air and finally understood why the Count wanted Ager. He could not understand it. How could an old man's blood smell that good? A vampire's instincts were roaring. Kill Ager, taste the blood immediately. But the Zero in front of him had become his biggest problem. Biken rushed at Zero with his blade. He wanted to get rid of this eyesore first. Relying on his abundant combat experience, Beacon found an opening after several moves, and slashed Zero across the shoulder with one strike. But Beacon's pupils suddenly shrank, Zero's flesh and blood on his arm were writhing and reforming. It healed within moments, but the pain made Zero's fury explode completely. Taking advantage of Beacon's moment of shock, Zero blasted him away with one punch. Beacon crossed both arms to block the blow, but a chill rose in his heart. This child was improving far too quickly. But in the next second, an awl suddenly pierced straight through Beacon's chest. Ager coldly yanked it back out, and Beacon was gravely wounded on the spot. He had never imagined that in such a short time, Ager had already slaughtered all of his subordinates cleanly. Blood sprayed wildly from Beacon's body, slowly dropped to its knees. As Zero watched Beacon fall, he could not quite describe what he was feeling. 3 weeks ago, he had still just been a child barely surviving behind his brother, utterly powerless against anyone. But now, he could already stand on his own, so this was what it felt like to fight and kill people. At that moment, Zero released his transformation, and Ager gave him rare praise. "You've got a bit of strength now." Zero struggled to strip clothes off a prisoner's body, and Ager urged him to hurry. They had already delayed too long. At this moment, on the vampire count's side, several maids were apologizing to their lord because release had prevented them from returning in time. But the vampire Endurus narrowed his eyes. He clearly felt that his mental link with Beacon had been severed. That waste was not even worth counting as level 3, so he normally did not care. But by coincidence, Ager had been assigned to that waste's territory. He was thinking, when would he finally be able to sit down and have tea with Ager? Meanwhile, in another corridor, 3 figures stood beside a huge ogre. The one leading them was none other than the level 2 beastman Horak and his group. After tempering themselves through this release, they were already able to join forces to defeat a medium-sized ogre. But in their hearts, they were still thinking about Ager and Zero. Lucas knew very well, as long as Zero was with Ager, he had to still be alive. On the other side, while Ager and Zero were making their way back to the cell, they were being attacked the entire way. After dealing with another wave, Zero asked Ager, "Who exactly are these people?" Ager told him, "They were one of the organizations in loneliness, the black magicians of the demon worshippers. They should be hunting me down. I have a very bad relationship with their leader." Halfway along the road, Ager smelled another sharp, foul odor. Even Zero noticed that something was wrong, and Ager said directly, "We've probably run into a ghostly creature again." Ager looked at the ugly thing, called out its name, Osu, and told Zero to deal with it. "It's a strong enemy, but for the current you, it shouldn't be difficult." Ursu looked strong, but Zero believed Grandpa would not lie to him. He transformed on the spot and charged forward, throwing a punch at the monster's head, and unexpectedly knocked it down with a single blow. Zero immediately felt, "I can win." But in the next second, Zero was smashed hard into the ground by the ghostly creature. When prisoners encountered ghostly creatures in the corridor, there were many ways to die. Maybe their combat power was insufficient, but usually that was not the truly fatal part, because ghostly creatures released dark aura, and the essence of that thing was fear. And ghostly creatures were basically all level 4 or above, not to mention levels 1 and 2. Even level 3 would be affected, unless you could face the darkness in your own heart. Zero fought Usu back and forth, but still could not finish it off, because Zero did not yet have an innate ability. Just then, layers of ice swept toward Usu. The moment Ager saw that, he knew she had arrived, so he asked, "You've seen your sister?" "I have, and I also delivered your regards to her, and she was very happy." With a casual strike of her hand, the powerful ghostly creature was instantly frozen into an ice statue. Ager could even more clearly feel how strong this girl was. She seemed to have broken through again. Her ice ability was absolutely enough to rank among the top 30 in this prison. Right after they finished dealing with Yusu, Zero leaned against the corridor wall and curiously looked at this snow-white older sister. She had actually dealt with Usu in just one move. The Usu that had been so arrogant a moment ago had been frozen into countless fragments and crashed to the ground. And Zero could tell that she and Ager were very close. With a smile, she asked Ager to help her find her cell, saying she had just returned from the arena and gotten lost. From behind, Zero quietly thanked her, only to see Alice casually glance back at him. Zero could clearly feel that she did not like him very much. At this moment, on the other side of the corridor, the level 5 black magic swordswoman of the demon worshippers, Suvalin, was complaining. Seeing the miserable state of the guy beside her, her anger flared instantly. How did I end up in the same group as him? Not only did he act on his own, he even got his connection with the ghostly creature forcibly severed. Now he's turned straight into an idiot. He'd be better off dead. But this was an order from Commander Darkus, so Suvalin could only swallow her frustration. Just then, Suvalin's eyes sharpened. She sensed that the subordinates connected to her nearby were dying one after another. The target had probably been found. Suvalin immediately took her men and the necromancer's saddle and rushed toward the direction where her subordinates had died. On the other side of the corridor, the group had just dealt with another black magician. Alice said to Ager, it looked like they had planned this in advance, gathering together the moment release began. Zero watched how familiar Ager and Alice were with each other, then gathered his courage and asked, Big sister, when did you and Grandpa meet? Were you this strong from the very beginning? Looking at the restless look in the boy's eyes, Alice felt that he had been paying attention to her all along. He had probably always followed Ager, and now had developed a competitive feeling toward her as well. Alice said to Zero, 7 years ago, my sister and I were framed. When we first came in, our hearts were full of despair. We had nowhere to go and had even thought about ending our lives. But Grandpa pulled us back. He also taught us how to become stronger, so that we could enter the arena. At that moment, Alice suddenly turned her head to look, and killing intent instantly pressed out from her eyes, while Ager said helplessly, why do these annoying pests keep coming wave after wave? At that moment, Zero saw dense figures at the other end of the corridor, and the feeling was exactly the same as when facing Usu earlier. It was so oppressive he could hardly breathe. Sylvelyn stared at Ager, the target right in front of her, and directly gave the order, bring me that old man. The black magicians charging forward simultaneously gathered magic in their hands. Alice stepped forward. Leave them to me, Grandpa. I've always wanted you to see what I can do now. In the next second, the group of black magicians all raised their hands together, and blazing flames wrapped in black energy swept toward them. Alice raised a hand and pressed down, and countless ice spikes burst up beneath the black magician's feet. The ice spikes surged straight into the crowd, and each time they passed a person, even more icy thorns erupted beneath their feet. Watching the scene, Ager felt as if his thoughts were being dragged back to the past. The image of the two sisters holding each other and crying seemed like it had happened only yesterday. The black magicians had absolutely no power to fight back before Alice. She can stand on her own now. Alice released cold air and ice spikes wildly. She hated anyone interrupting her while she was talking with Grandpa. Ager had not expected that they had already grown enough to stand in front of him. Alice silently said in her heart, snowflake armor. In the next instant, ice clung to her clothing and formed armor. She even wanted to thank these bastards, because now, she could finally be of help. Using this battle, she could also stay by Grandpa's side a little longer. Zero stared at Alice in shock, like an ice queen. He could not help asking Ager how she could possibly be this strong. Feeling the surging chill all around them, Ager said, Alice's cold aura can be regarded as a branch of elemental ability. In the universe, there are light and darkness, and also lightning, wind, fire, earth, and water, a total of 7 elements. Cold aura is the result of cultivating her water element to a certain level. The Usui dealt with before carried the darkness element, and that was one of the reasons it was so powerful. Zero muttered blankly, elements. Ager frowned. They actually brought that thing too? Alice immediately sensed it as well. That aura was far too obvious. Headcutter among the ghostly creatures, this was not the kind of thing people could casually control. Ager looked at Saddle. I didn't expect that even after turning into an idiot, his ability would still be this troublesome. Then Ager called Zero over in front of him. He formed seals with both hands. You're still struggling to deal with them right now, so I'll help you a little. Next, I'm going to establish a connection with you. At the same time the connection began, Ager said to him, treat it like telepathy. It'll last only a few minutes at most. During those minutes, remember the feeling. At this moment, Headcutter clung to the corridor wall and charged toward them like a spider. Just before it pounced, the connection between Ager and Zero was completed. Zero successfully transformed into a werewolf and urgently asked, what am I supposed to learn? Ager said in a deep voice, I'm going to forcibly stimulate the element inside your body. Don't lose focus. Hearing the word element, Zero froze for a moment. He failed to dodge in time and was blasted away directly by Headcutter. At this moment, Alice was still slaughtering black magicians like mad. There were simply too many enemies. Looking at the necromancer in the distance staying far away, Alice immediately found it troublesome. In theory, she only had to take care of the necromancer controlling the rider. But there were too many black magicians, and she could not get close at all. She swung her ice sword again, and 4 or 5 black magicians were instantly blasted away and cut in half at the waist. Crimson blood splashed across the corridor walls, dyeing the entire corridor dark red. On the other side, while Zero was locked in battle with Headcutter, he could clearly feel that there was some kind of thing on the ghostly creature, and there was something similar inside his own body, making his mind throb with pain. At the very moment Headcutter attacked Zero again, the direction, trajectory, and intent of its attack suddenly appeared in Zero's mind. He felt all of it, so he dodged most of Headcutter's attacks. Watching Zero gradually become more and more at ease, Ager's eyes lit with interest. An element that can sense changes and respond in advance. Should be the wind element, which suits him perfectly. Zero sensed the change within himself and instantly became excited. Meanwhile, the Dark Swordswoman watching the battle from afar felt things becoming more and more troublesome. Looking at the tiny snowflakes floating in the air, Suvalin had not expected this. The black magicians could not withstand Alice at all, and could only rely on sheer numbers. She had heard the rumors countless times, but this was her first time seeing it with her own eyes. She must be one of the arena prisoners. This mission had been ordered personally by the Legion commander. Suvalin knew it would be difficult, but she had not expected it to be difficult to this extent. Looks like I'll have to do it myself. She swept her gaze across the battlefield and suddenly noticed that Aegir was gone, his figure nowhere to be found in her field of vision. Just then, Aegir suddenly cut in from behind Suvalin. The moment his weapon struck Suvalin's body, dazzling sparks exploded. Aegir's heart sank. He had not expected her to have protective armor. Aegir continued the pursuit, and seeing this, Suvalin immediately had the protective armor cover her whole body. But Aegir suddenly changed direction and rushed straight toward the necromancer. His target had always been Saddle. But at the very last moment, Suvalin blocked his path. Aegir stared at her and said, "You already knew I was targeting him, and you still managed to block this strike of mine. You do have some skill." Suvalin shot back coldly, "You old man, you're not slow either. I'd really like to know why our Legion commander is so obsessed with you." As she spoke, Suvalin slowly drew her blade. Aegir also lowered his center of gravity and took his stance. On the other side, Ciro was still locked in battle with the ghostly creature. Although he could predict its attacks, he simply could not hurt it. The shell was too hard. Once again, using the speed of wind, Ciro closed the distance and slammed a punch into it. The ghostly creature cried out in pain and staggered back again and again. While breathing hard, Ciro tried to think of a way. How am I supposed to fight this? I can't break through it at all. At that moment, Aegir's voice sounded in Ciro's mind. Its entire body is releasing the darkness element outward. Your attacks are meaningless against it. Ciro urgently asked. Then how am I supposed to defeat it? Don't let it get close to Alice. Just hold it off. Leave the rest to me. At this moment, Aegir and the dark swordswoman Suvalin had already begun fighting head-on as well. Suvalin was full of shock. At his age, how could he still be this fast? Could he be a spirit knight? Rumor said that even in old age, they could still use mana to arm their bodies, gain extraordinary power, and even slow aging. But Suvalin could not feel the presence of mana on Aegir at all. She stared at the shabby awl in Aegir's hand and refused to believe that thing could break through her armor. In the instant she was distracted, Aegir seized the opportunity and swung the awl fiercely. Her arm, together with the armor, was cut clean off. Suvalin could not believe it. Armor forged from dark magic had actually been broken. Could it be that Aegir was also a user of the darkness element? At this moment, Aegir advanced slowly towards Suvalin with the awl in hand. Suvalin was certain. There was no elemental aura at all on Aegir. Then the only possibility was that something was wrong with the awl. In the next second, Suvalin's power erupted sharply. She stacked on double protective armor, deciding to avoid close combat with Aegir as much as possible from now on. Then dark energy surged again, and she slashed out with her blade, feeling stifled to the point of numbness. Before coming here, she had been the notorious black magic swordswoman. But facing an old man like Aegir, she could only rely on ranged attacks to drag things out. Aegir did not want to keep wasting time. His aura exploded violently, and Suvalin was instantly pierced by fear. Cold sweat burst out at once. She could clearly smell death. Suvalin hesitated no longer and directly used Dark Sacrifice. This was dark magic that used sacrifice as a medium. The stronger the sacrifice, the harsher the spell. In the next second, the necromancer's saddle was wrapped in black energy and forcibly dragged up into the air. Saddle was instantly terrified to the extreme. Even if Saddle died, the ghostly creature would stop, but Suvalin no longer had the luxury of caring about that. At this moment, the ghostly creatures fighting Alice and Ciro suddenly all came to a stop. Zero and Alice exchanged a glance, completely unable to understand what had happened. Immediately after, the huge ghostly creature crashed to the ground, making the corridor tremble with the impact. Ciro was stunned for half a second. He did not understand why, but he really had just gotten his life back because of it. He had been fighting too long, and his body had already been drained dry. Alice immediately retreated behind Aegir, while the darkness around Suvalin had grown so dense it had turned pitch black. Alice's eyes were full of worry. She believed Aegir would win, but she did not want him to get hurt. At this moment, Suvalin's dark aura was several times thicker than before. She compressed all the darkness into her blade, then slashed at Aegir with one strike. The power of darkness rushed toward Aegir like a flood. Aegir stood where he was, as if he had not moved at all. The instant the darkness touched Aegir, a violent explosion erupted. Suvalin stared at the center of the explosion, trembling with excitement. She was certain she had hit him. But Aegir walked out of the smoke and dust step by step until he stood before her. It's been a long time since I've seen black magic this fierce. You really are talented, but do you know the price? The price is offering your soul to a demon. Kids these days really are bold. Your soul will soon be sent to the void seat. Suvalin dropped weakly to her knees. She could not understand why black magic was completely ineffective against Aegir. Aegir walked up to her, looked down at her, and drove the all down fiercely. The armor on Suvalin's body shattered on the spot, and her whole body was blasted away, spraying a mist of blood. Aegir watched it all with cold indifference. Rolling black energy rose from Suvalin's corpse, and Aegir merely watched in silence. The blue markings on his face gradually faded, and when he came back to himself, he asked them whether they were all right. Alice looked at Aegir with concern, but Aegir said he was fine. "You're the one who doesn't look too good." Alice's face was covered in cold sweat, and she was breathing hard. This battle had consumed too much of her. Zero had already exited his transformation and was leaning against a corner, breathing just as heavily. Aegir told them, "Leave immediately. If we drag this out any longer, we might run into something else." At that moment, a round of applause entered their ears, and Aegir immediately turned his head. A man in white was walking toward them, praising the old man's astonishing skill. Alice's gaze instantly turned cold, and she stepped in front of Aegir. Aegir told her, "Not an enemy. Long time no see, Job." Behind the man were densely packed followers. Job smiled and greeted Aegir. He had not expected to run into them here. The moment Alice heard that name, she seemed to guess something at once, and Aegir directly told her, they really were zealots. The Zealots were an organization named after 11 constellations such as trust, hope, and love. Whether cultists or heretics, they would execute them all. Alice narrowed her eyes. Among mid-level criminals, almost no one did not know Job. Job smiled and said to Aegir that they had used release day to purge the demon worshippers. "You saw it too. I already cleaned them up." The moment Job heard that, he immediately bowed to Aegir and solemnly thanked him. Alice's gaze froze. A level 6 criminal was actually bowing to Grandpa in thanks. At that moment, Job had several magicians step out from his team, and they healed Zero and Alice on the spot, instantly sweeping away their exhaustion. Job smiled. "This is blessing magic. As for the old man, I will personally." Before he could finish, Aegir raised a hand and interrupted him. After that, Aegir turned and left with Alice and Zero. Job told Aegir to take care of his health. Aegir turned back and said, "In here, do not show mercy to anyone. You only need to take care of yourself." Job's expression turned solemn. "If you ever need anything, no matter what it is, I am willing to do it for you." Aegir gave no answer and only continued leading Alice and Zero farther away. Job watched the retreating figures, then suddenly knelt down and murmured softly, "The one who can fulfill what he seeks. Even if I must offer up my life for you, I would do so willingly. There are still many who know they are foolish, yet continue seeking the righteous path. So please hear our prayer, our Savior." Aegir led Alice and Zero as they walked back. He walked in silence at the very front, and both of them could feel it. Aegir was in a very bad mood. Alice did not actually know much about Aegir's past, but she had not expected Aegir to have dealings with the notorious zealots. Alice said to Zero, "Grandpa once said he does not like people who believe in constellations." Zero asked curiously, "Is believing in gods a bad thing?" Alice shook her head. "Not exactly a bad thing. Constellations do not directly interfere with the present world, but they do seek out agents." At that moment, Aegir stopped in front of a cell door and turned to Alice. "You're here." Alice clearly had not reacted yet and only nodded blankly. Every time, she marveled at Aegir's ability to find the way. The routes here changed, and she had always wanted to know how Aegir could remember them. Alice said goodbye to Aegir. "I'll come see you next time." Aegir replied directly, "No need." Even so, she still hugged Aegir once and told him to take care of himself. Watching their backs, Alice said softly, "For them, the corridor may be nothing more than a place for a walk." After that, Alice returned to her own prison cell. Aegir and Zero walked through the deep corridor, and Zero suddenly cried out. He had seen the number plate. It was their cell. A day had already passed since release, and Aegir and Zero had finally returned to their own cell. But several more days passed, and not a single one of the others came back. These past few days, Zero had been sitting on scrap metal and training. He kept meditating, replaying what had happened over the past few days. The old him had always hesitated and could only survive by relying on his brother's protection. But now he could kill decisively and even switch forms. More frightening still, his way of thinking had changed too. Now when he looked back on the past, he only felt that his former self had been too cowardly. Watching Zero's back, Aegir thought to himself, "It seems his spirit has awakened as well." At that moment, Zero twitched his nose, clearly smelling a strange odor. Seeing Zero jump down and say the smell was getting closer, Aegir replied, "Magan is probably back. He probably used his source power in battle, which is why his smell turned like this." Aegir also sniffed. "This nasty smell is like the scent of medicinal pills. Actually, Magan is no different from Pecan, so you know what to do." Zero nodded heavily. He would not hesitate anymore now. At that moment, Magan walked in with all his men. The old man and the young boy stood in the open space, watching Magan's group coldly. Magan laughed loudly. "It's so good to see you again, old man." Before his smile had even faded, Zero suddenly kicked one of the underlings behind him. In an instant, several people let out shrill screams. Magan flew into a rage. "You little wolf brat, what are you doing?" Looking at this child who was completely different from the one a few days ago, he was shocked to the extreme. Magan looked toward Ager, wanting Ager to stop Zero. But Ager said helplessly, "Stop acting. Didn't you want to trade us for raw materials for pills in the corridor too?" Magan's expression instantly sank to the bottom. What an old fox. He sneered and asked, "How did you find out?" Ager could not be bothered to answer and directly drew his weapon. After a round of slaughter, only Ager and Zero were still standing. Even as he died, Magan was still cursing Ager. Ager slowly said, "It seems you all have always misunderstood me. Not even the demon worshipper Darkus, the vampire king Enduras, or the mafia king you follow can take me away, so what makes you think you can?" Looking at the hatred in Magan's eyes, Ager felt a chill in his heart. "I really am old. I've even started talking too much." Then he ended it cleanly and directly sent Magan on his way. At this moment, inside a tightly secured monitoring room, a blue light flashed across the equipment in front of the chair. Sitting in the chair was the warden of the Planet Loneliness Prison, Sorius Enagleg. He respectfully said to the person before him, "I have already sent you the relevant report on Ager, Lord Karisman." Karisman glanced at it. Ager still likes slaughtering people everywhere. "Yes, which is why I ordered Ager to stay in a solitary cell for 2 weeks. To avoid drawing the attention of the cosmic government and the church, I made him hide for 66 years, but he can hardly stay hidden much longer. And just in time, the king of the lycanthropes is on his way to confirm the condition of the merchandise." The warden let out a sigh. "I only hope this mission will be the last time we have to give Ager pills. Also, the demon-worshipping Legion commander is pursuing Ager, and conflict may break out after the opening." Karisman smiled faintly. "He can handle it himself. It's been so long that I've gotten used to observing him. I heard his health is not very good either. If there are no pills, then at most 5 months, at least 3 months, Ager will die in loneliness." At the same time, Zero was sensing the wind flowing around him. He caught every tiny change nearby, from crawling insects to falling droplets of water. Zero suddenly opened his eyes. So this is what an element is. He stomped the ground hard, and the wind was drawn by him, winding around his whole body. Compared to a month ago, he had become much, much stronger. But he still could not hurt the ghostly creatures. Grandpa said that only by possessing power that surpasses the other side's element can you defeat them. He thought seriously, how could he strengthen his wind element? Grandpa must know the way. I'll wait patiently for him to teach me. Only then, when I reunite with my brother, will I not hold him back. Ager was just sitting quietly beside Zero as he trained. At that moment, his ears twitched, as if he had heard the cell door open. Zero sensed it too and turned to look toward the entrance. A figure walked in through the doorway and called out Ager's name. Looking closely, it was someone wearing a prison guard's uniform, still calling for Ager. Ager answered from behind her, and she coldly accused him, standing behind me without making a sound. How rude. Ager told Zero to come over at once, and Zero quickly trotted over to stand in front of him. The woman introduced herself. I am level 6 guard Tessie. Zero's heart tightened. Level 6. That meant she was even stronger than big sister Alice, who was level 5. The feeling she gave Zero was completely different. Like a ferocious beast that could pounce and kill at any moment. Ager looked at her and asked, no new people have been added here for several days. Does that mean I have to change cells again? Ager scratched his ear helplessly. My health hasn't been very good lately. I don't want to move again. Tessie's expression darkened. What is this old man trying to pull? The seniors only told me not to provoke him. They didn't say he would refuse to cooperate. How about a bet? You let this child fight me. If he wins, I'll go with you. Ager turned to look at Zero. And Zero nodded to him, showing he agreed. He directly took his stance. Tessie helplessly tightened her gloves. Kid, I won't go easy on you. Their two gazes collided head-on, and even the air seemed to tense. Tessie made the first move. Zero hurriedly raised his arms to guard his chest and twisted aside to dodge. Tessie glanced at Ager, unable to believe it. A level 3 prisoner had actually dodged. Wind element. Tessie understood even more clearly now. This kid was probably trained by the old man. You want to use me to feed him experience? Then I'll teach him a lesson. Power suddenly gathered in Tessie's palm, and she slashed forward. The refined iron beside them was split cleanly into two, while Zero used to be able to leave only scratches on it. Cold sweat instantly broke out on Zero. She also has the wind element, yet she can split it in one strike. Then in the future, can I do that too? He could not help thinking that. Tessie stared at Zero, anger rising. This kid had actually let his mind wander. He was taking her too lightly. Zero immediately focused himself, because he could clearly feel that the prison guard's aura had changed. Originally, he had thought that even if he could not win, he should at least hold out a little longer. But Tessie's speed was absurdly fast. At some unknown moment she had already circled behind Zero, and in the next second countless punches rained down on him. He wanted to block, but the pain exploded through him like electricity, and his body would not obey him at all. With her final blow, Tessie smashed Zero hard into the ground. Looking down at the little boy on the floor, Tessie found it hard to connect him with the werewolf from earlier. "Guard," Tessie said coldly. "I didn't kill him. I won." Ager nodded. "Then I can only go with you." Then Ager carried Zero on his back and followed the guard out. After walking for a while, Zero woke up too. Ager led him to the right, but the guard immediately said they were supposed to go left. Ager said to the guard, "Going right is faster. I need to stop by somewhere on the way." Tessie was speechless for a moment and thought that less trouble was better, so she let him have his way. If things got messed up, it would be her rest time that got delayed. Ager brought them to a door, and the inside was blindingly bright. Zero instinctively rubbed his eyes. Ager took Zero inside and told him this was a place where he could train non-stop, and it could also be treated as a gym. Ager said to Zero, "Stay here and train. I'm going somewhere else with the guard. I'll come pick you up in 2 weeks. Can you manage on your own?" Zero nodded heavily. "I can, Grandpa. I'll keep training here." Images of his training flashed through Ager's mind, and he patted Zero on the shoulder. "This place can strengthen your wind element several times over. Train properly for me." Zero thought of the scene where the guard had completely overwhelmed him, and clenched his fists to encourage himself. "I can do this." Cyril looked seriously at Ager. "Grandpa, I'll definitely do it." Ager brought Cyril and the guard into the gym. Everyone around them was surprised. Why would a prison guard come here? Guard Tessie stood with her arms crossed and frowned. She clearly disliked the smell and environment here. Tessie urged Ager to finish things quickly and said she would wait outside. At that moment, a heavy set of footsteps approached, and a muscular man walked up in front of them. He said, "Isn't this old man Ager? Why have you brought another child again? This isn't a nursery." This man was none other than the boss of the gym, the level 5 prisoner Dramu. Someone in the gym muttered quietly, "They're not going to fight, are they?" Dramu seemed used to it. "Old man, this product looks even younger this time." Ager replied calmly, "Long time no see, Dramu, but it's too noisy here, not suitable for talking." Dramu turned around and gestured for everyone to shut up. Everyone immediately fell silent, even breathing more softly. Ager asked Dramu to help him train this child, but Dramu instead asked, "What about our previous agreement?" As if remembering something, he said, "Let's make a deal, old man. After Ciro finishes training here under me, you fight me in a duel." Ager scratched his head helplessly. "You lose every time, so why bother?" Ager turned and walked out. "Fine. Once you finish training him, we'll set it here." Ager gave Ciro one last look. From now on, he could only rely on himself here. Drama shouted after the old man, "Don't worry. Leave this kid to Dramu." The moment Ager left, Dramu fiercely said to Ciro, "Kid, get over here. Ready to suffer?" Ciro instantly grew nervous. When all was said and done, he was still a child by nature. But he had no choice and could only follow Dramu deeper into the gym. After walking for a while, guard Tessie finally brought Ager to the cell he was supposed to go to. It was a solitary cell, with no sound inside at all, only darkness and deathly silence. If someone was locked up there too long, they would collapse, lose their mind, or even end their own life. Tessie entered the access code at the door, but Ager urged her from behind to hurry up. Tessie could not understand it. Why did Ager act as if entering a solitary cell was like going home? Most people could not bear that kind of darkness at all. After entering the code, Tessie prepared to leave immediately, but Ager said behind her, "If you go right, that's the lounge." Just as Ager was about to enter the cell, he suddenly smelled something. He whipped around and charged at Tessie, restraining her from behind and clamping a hand tightly over her mouth. Tessie still had no idea what was happening, and only felt that this old man had gone mad. He actually dared to take a prison guard hostage. In this prison, let alone taking a guard hostage, even taking the warden hostage would not let anyone escape. He was simply courting death. Meanwhile, in the gym, one of Dramo's underlings was testing Ciro's limits. After going through a full set on the equipment, Ciro was already so exhausted that he collapsed onto the ground. Ciro also noticed that the prisoners here seemed to care only about training. He had originally thought Uncle Dramo was going to torture him, but it turned out to be this kind of torture. After that, Dramu called Ciro onto the fighting platform and told him to have a match with someone else. The surrounding prisoners watched the little boy on the stage with teasing expressions. Seeing that Ciro looked like a well-behaved child, his opponent was instantly speechless. He felt he might beat Ciro to death. That man was the level 4 boxer Vincent, and he asked Dramu, "If I accidentally beat him to death, I'm not taking responsibility. You can break 2 or 3 of his limbs and knock him out directly." Dramo calculated inwardly, Ager only protects merchandise worth at least hundreds of millions. This child cannot be harmed. A nearby prisoner acted as referee, and with one command, the match began. Vincent charged at Zero like a cannonball fired from its barrel. Zero immediately activated Beastman transformation. Everyone around them was shocked. Beastmen usually could not transform until after the age of 20. Dramu's heart sank. Ager definitely taught him. He could not understand why Ager was willing to teach this brat, yet unwilling to teach him. The fight on the stage quickly heated up, and Vincent threw a heavy punch straight at him. Zero immediately raised his arm to block, and the two exchanged dozens of direct clashes. Zero felt that Vincent's fists were like iron hammers. He was big and not slow either. But compared with the ghostly creatures in the corridor, this was nothing at all. Zero remembered Grandpa's warning. At first, elemental power consumes physical strength. Later, it consumes mental strength. Once your mental strength is exhausted, the only ending is death, so try not to use elemental power. But this was not the corridor. This battle was to test his own strength. So Zero stopped hesitating, and the wind element wrapped around his whole body. At that moment, Vincent's attack trajectory became crystal clear in Zero's eyes. Vincent was instantly shocked. He could not understand why this child could suddenly dodge all of his attacks. Seizing the opening while Vincent was stunned, Zero threw a fierce punch. In an instant, blood surged from Vincent's chest. This strike was enough to seriously injure him. Vincent clutched his chest in pain, unwilling to lose to a child. But after struggling a few times, he still collapsed with resentment. The crowd instantly erupted in discussion. No one could believe that Zero was the one who won. Dramu had not expected the child sent by the old man to be this fierce. Even Vincent, who had just advanced to level 4, had been beaten down by him. That was because elemental power was originally a skill that only level 5 could master. Even with the old man's guidance, it was absolutely not easy for a level 3 prisoner to learn it. Dramu instantly had the urge to step in personally. He cupped his fist towards Zero. "Next, I'll be your opponent." Before the words had even finished, a massive iron fist wrapped in fierce force smashed toward him. And Zero did not even have time to think. He could only keep dodging. At this moment, Zero had almost no power to fight back. He wrapped the last trace of wind element in his body around himself. But he still could not dodge Dramu's iron fist. That punch hit Zero so hard he spat blood. The gap with a level 5 prisoner was a qualitative difference. Immediately after came another heavy punch that blasted Zero straight away. His claws dragged along the ground, scraping out dazzling sparks. His brother's figure flashed through Zero's mind. He never wanted to burden his brother again. The werewolf bloodline erupted instantly, and the surrounding wind elemental power surged violently. And in a single moment he leaped above Dramu, slashing down hard with his claws. At that moment, all Drama could do was raise both arms to block. Zero seized that instant and unleashed a continuous barrage of attacks. After tanking several blows, Dramu directly grabbed Zero in a hold. In the next second, using downward force like gravity, he smashed Zero into the ground with overwhelming power. But Zero had already pushed his wind element to its limit and forcibly broke free. With a backflip, he kicked toward Dramu's face. After it was blocked, he used his agility advantage again, driving a punch into Dramu's back, then quickly dodged away and kept circling Dramu, harassing him non-stop. But after fighting for so long, Dramu had not suffered a single injury, while Zero himself was almost collapsing from exhaustion. It turned out that Dramu's body had long since been covered in a layer of red stone armor. Dramu withdrew the red stone armor and said with a smile, "You're very good. That darkness training is good too." Zero was shaken when he heard that. "You also went through that training of walking in that dark world?" Ager was instantly speechless. So he really had to walk in darkness? Back then, he had clearly only said it casually. Zero told Dramu about the meditation training method Grandpa had taught him, and said frankly that he had become stronger precisely because of meditation. Dramu laughed and joked, "Cut the nonsense. You think I've never meditated before? This meditation is different. You have to walk through the darkness in your inner world. Grandpa taught me that." Although Dramu did not quite understand it, this was the old man's method. He immediately said to Zero, "Master, please teach me this method." Zero froze instantly. He felt something was wrong, and besides, he himself had only trained for 1 month. Grandpa had long warned him, this kind of thing could not be taught casually to others. It was extremely dangerous. Ager had even sternly warned him, absolutely do not try it. But seeing Dramu almost pleading like that, and thinking that he would still need to rely on him for training afterward, Zero's heart softened. Revealing just a tiny bit should be fine, right? Dramu was also suppressing his excitement inside. "I have to be patient. I can't push the child too hard. Even if I get rejected, it doesn't matter. There's still time. I have to learn it." Zero hesitantly said, I'll try to teach you that method." Dramu was as happy as a child. "Really? Then let's start right now." Zero told Dramu to close his eyes first and think of nothing. Focus only on breathing, then take as deep a breath as possible. Right after that, it would begin. Meanwhile, at the prison guard rest area, Guard Tessie had just been about to take a shower, but her mind flashed back again to that old man Ager. When she had taken Ager to the solitary cell, Ager had suddenly covered her mouth. At the time, she thought Ager had gone mad, but then Ager told her to look ahead. There, right in front of them, crouched an ugly ghostly creature. Tessie had been puzzled then. Don't I have a protective charm on me? The protective charm was made by the Church of the Light Constellation. In theory, ghostly creatures could not approach. Why would a ghostly creature still attack? Ager replied flatly, it may have malfunctioned. That happens occasionally. Tessie had been a prison guard for so long, yet this was the first time she had ever heard of a ghostly creature malfunctioning. The more she thought about it, the more curious she became, and she pressed Ager about who he really was. Ager said helplessly, if you really want to know, go ask the clerk. Tessie was instantly shocked. The clerk Bemlio was a level 9 prison guard, and his position had always been kept secret. This old man was clearly only a level 1 prisoner, so how could he know that? Seeing that Tessie still had not left, Ager said again, if you're curious, he'll give you the answer. You can close the door now. After that, Tessie turned and left. Tessie felt even itchier with curiosity. Just how many secrets was Ager still hiding? On the other side, Ciro brought Dramu into his inner world, but he could not see Dramu anywhere. Afraid that something had happened to Dramu, Ciro hurriedly called out for him everywhere. At that moment, Ager appeared behind Ciro and coldly scolded him. Why didn't you listen? Ciro was instantly terrified. Grandpa had gone to the solitary cell, so how could he be here? Ager told him. He had already completed the deal, so he could enter Ciro's inner world. Besides, Dramu simply could not walk in darkness. His inner world was too bright. That was why his mind had been taken away. The true darkness he should have stepped into, he could not see at all. If this continued, he would completely collapse, and the only ending would be death. Ager told Ciro that he had to take responsibility for this, and strands of black energy bound Ciro. Ager stared at Ciro. First, feel the weight of it. You didn't take my words seriously, so now go reflect in the darkness. Looking at Dramu, Ager thought that this guy had grown quite a bit compared to when he first met him. Now he had his own judgment too, perhaps because he had become the manager of the gym. In that case, I'll give you a little help. Many things may still be changed. Ager turned to look behind him and saw that he had already walked a very long road. He raised his head to look at the huge figure before him, then lifted his gaze once more and stared. He had already waited for so many years, so what was the hurry now? Ager stared at that huge figure and murmured, soon, it will be over soon. At this time in the gym, the level 5 prisoner Pilum was admiring his own muscular build. He had always felt that the boss of the gym should have been him. He calculated inwardly. If Dramu exchanged guidance from the old man by training that brat, then he would become even less able to surpass him, so he had to ruin them. He opened a locker and took something out. It was a bead that could contact the demon worshippers. He immediately reported the situation of the old man and the brat to them. After settling the payment, Pilum said, I'll bring that brat over in a bit. Then Pilum came to Dramu's door. Seeing no movement inside, he pushed the door open and went in directly. He saw Dramu with his eyes closed and no response, so he said directly, Dramu, since this brat came to the gym, how about I take him away and train him properly for you? But there was still no response. Their consciousnesses seemed to remain, yet neither of them could answer. Pilum simply picked Ciro up and left, taking it as their silent agreement. At this moment, several black magicians had already gathered in the corridor outside the gym. Before long, a muscular man carried a child to them. After confirming that it was the target, the black magicians took out several vials and handed them to Pilum. Pilum accepted the vials and turned to leave. The black magicians laughed in low voices. As expected, he's just a muscle-brained idiot. Meanwhile, Dramu's entire body suddenly convulsed violently. In the next second, he jerked awake. Dramu was drenched in sweat, his face flushed red. He looked around and suddenly realized that Ciro was gone. Dramu clenched his fists. That experience just now had felt like taking a trip through another world. Those past memories alone almost dragged me in. Luckily, I broke free at the end by instinct. What is past is just past. Only then did Dramu understand. He had always been bound by the past, and that was why he had never been able to take the next step. There was a small patch of darkness in his heart, and in that darkness, it seemed as if someone had always been waving to him. He did not know who it was. Maybe, it was his future self. Before he could think further, one of his men rushed in. That madman Pilum is beating up our brothers. Dramu immediately charged into the main hall of the gym and saw that all his subordinates were already on the ground. Dramu's anger turned icy. Pilum, you'd better give me an explanation. Pilum grinned viciously. You won't get away either, because I just gained a wonderful experience. A wonderful experience? Dramu laughed too, his voice deep and hard. What a coincidence. So did I. Meanwhile, in the corridor on the other side, the black magicians were resting. The black magician guarding Ciro noticed that this brat had been muttering under his breath the whole time. Before he could react, his arm was cut off directly. Immediately after, a voice that was clearly not Ciro sounded out. I'm very curious what it feels like to possess a werewolf. The other black magicians had not yet recovered their wits. They had never heard that this brat was this strong. Soon, someone noticed the number on Ciro's neck, 51. They stared at the child before them, whose pressure was overwhelming, their voices trembling. Number 51? How is that possible? Ager, possessing Ciro's body, clearly felt an impulse, the violent urge to rush up and tear prey apart immediately. Perhaps it is exactly this emotion that drove werewolves to extinction. What a pity. As merchandise, he will not stay in loneliness for long, then I may as well enjoy this properly. At this moment, Ciro's body underwent a huge transformation. The beastman threshold he had never been able to cross was effortlessly crushed by Ager's spiritual power. Ager felt the complete form of a pureblood werewolf. This body is truly young. In the next second, he directly pounced at the black magicians in front of him. The black magicians hurriedly erected protective barriers, trying to block Ager. But Ager did not slow down, wildly darting through the crowd and cutting them apart. In only a short moment, not a single living person remained. He released the transformation and sighed softly. Possession time is too short, hard to control. Then he stripped clothes from the corpses of the black magicians. Every time I transform, I end up with no clothes to wear. What a hassle. Since I can feel Jacob nearby, I might as well go get a magic outfit that won't be torn apart first. Meanwhile, back in the gym, Dramo had actually fallen into a disadvantage. At first, they had been evenly matched, but in the end Pilum still gained the upper hand. Only now did Dramo truly regret it. He had been too arrogant in the past. Just then, Ager's voice drilled into Dramo's mind. That voice, old man? Ager said coldly, it's me. I worked so hard to lead you into darkness, and you're going to lose to a little nobody like this? Only then did Dramo realize, the shadow had always been Ager. He hurriedly shouted in his heart, old man, guide me a little more. I don't want to lose. Ager answered with only one sentence. Close your eyes, just like you did in the darkness. First, you have to suppress your fear. The moment Drama closed his eyes, it was as if he had caught that marvelous feeling again. Ager continued, don't look with your eyes. Feel the information the other side is releasing. Feel his element, his killing intent, his obsession. They are always flowing. Catch that flowing information, then use it against him. Right after that, Dramu knocked Pilum down with one punch. Everyone else in the gym was dumbfounded. Dramu had actually turned the situation around. At this moment, Dramu's heart was burning hot. So this was what it felt like to receive the old man's guidance. Then Dramu walked over to Pilum and coldly declared, the winner has been decided. But at that moment, Pilum suddenly tore open the flesh on his own chest. Dramu immediately shouted for everyone to get out. He's about to fall completely to the demons. Everyone frantically retreated outside, while Ager simply walked straight forward. And with one slash of his claw, Pilum was beheaded on the spot. I've always hated noisy places like this, Ager said flatly. Now it's finally quiet.